Chapter 2341. She faintly felt that something was amiss. Just as she was about to ask for more details, the heavenly lost stone spiraled up and a line of words appeared in Ning Xuema's mind. If you are in a difficult situation, you can come and find me. After saying that, it disappeared. Ning Xuema was speechless. The heavenly path stone would not speak without reason. Ning Xuema could not hold it in any longer. She threw the fishing rod and flew directly to the quiet room where Xinjiuli was. There was still no movement in the quiet room. Even the wizardry barrier outside the quiet room was still there. Although the wizardry barrier was very powerful, it was not difficult for Ning Xuema, who was used to breaking wizardry barriers. When she broke the wizardry barrier, the Almighty in the quiet room would feel it. However, the feeling was not strong, so it should not have a big impact on him. Ning Xuema tried to knock on the wizardry barrier to give some movement inside. After waiting for a while, she started to break the barrier. After a while, the wizardry barrier disappeared. She pushed the door open and walked in slowly. Then she stood there in a daze. In the quiet room, Xinjiuli was meditating on the cattail hassock. She could not see his figure. However, there was a huge white jade lotus bud. The flower bud was layered and shone with a 7-colored luster. Ning Xuema stood there in a daze for a while. Then she slowly walked forward and touched the flower bud with her fingers. She called out softly, "Almighty?" The flower bud trembled slightly. It did not bloom. Instead, the petals moved closer to the center. This scene was incomparably strange. Ning Xuema sighed. Her fingers didn't leave the flower bud as she once again spoke in a low voice. "Great God, you and I are husband and wife. No matter what you become, I can accept it. What is there that you can't let go of? If there is a problem, we can solve it together, okay?" Although her voice was low, it was very clear. Naturally, it was transmitted to the flower bud. After a while, a young voice came from the flower bud. "Xuema, send me to the misty lake." Although the voice was young, there was a kind of hoarseness in it. Ning Xuema's heart ached. Needless to say, the Almighty had turned into a baby again. Lotuses needed to be nourished by water, yet they were growing on this praying mat. No wonder the petals looked so weak. "Okay." Ning Xuema picked it up from the futon. "Don't let anyone see." The tender voice warned again. "I understand, don't worry." Ning Xuema simply put it into the storage space, then left the quiet room and went straight to the misty lake. The misty lake was vast and incomparably vast. One couldn't see the end of it with a single glance. The lake was rich in spiritual qi, and even the fish in the lake were more intelligent than the fish outside. Qiong Qi and Teng Shi were bathing in the lake in their original forms. They were swimming around in the lake, looking very comfortable. Suddenly they saw Ning Xuema flying over and standing by the lakeside. The two mythological beasts thought that she wanted to fish again, so they immediately jumped into the water and drove the fish from the bottom of the lake to her side. This was what they often did. Ning Xuema was fishing and they were playing in the water. They didn't interfere with each other. Unexpectedly, Ning Xuema didn't come to fish this time. Instead, she directly jumped into the lake. The two mythological beasts were shocked. They didn't dare to bathe with her. If the Divine Lord knew, he would directly turn them into stone statues. The two mythological beasts hurriedly swam to the shore. Then they looked at Ning Xuema, who was in the water, in surprise. "Devil Lord?" Ning Xuema smiled at them and said leisurely, "I want to take a good bath. Do you want to take a look?" As she spoke, she slowly took off her coat. Chapter 2342. The two mythical beasts were so scared that they almost fell back into the water. "Devil Master, please bathe, please bathe. We will clear the area for you." The two mythical beasts ran away like lightning. Not only did they run away, but they also warned other mythical beasts that wanted to bathe in the lake not to disturb them. The two mythical beasts were afraid that their divine madam's body would be seen by others, so they automatically took up the task of guarding the lake and chased away all creatures that might come close to the misty lake. "Almighty God, I have cleared the area for you. You can come out and recover." Ning Xuema took out the huge flower bud from the storage space and placed it on the water surface. An hour later, the originally withered and somewhat dim flower bud finally became sparkling and translucent, as if it had absorbed enough water. The petals opened up slightly. Ning Xuema had been guarding it by its side. Seeing that, she was slightly relieved. She touched the flower bud with her finger and asked, "Almighty God, are you feeling better?" "I'm feeling better." A young voice came from the flower bud. Even the voice was not as hoarse as before. It was much clearer. "Almighty God, what is going on? Can you tell me now?" Ning Xuema was full of curiosity. When she carried the Almighty God into the quiet room, he was just a little weak and did not look like he was going to turn into a flower bud. Why did he go back after cultivating for 6 days? There was no response from the flower bud for a while. After a while, the young voice finally said, "I don't know. Originally, I could recover after cultivating for 3 days. But on the 3rd day my body became weak and I became like this." Could it be that he went crazy after cultivating for 3 days? Or did he use too much of his divine power to revive Shui Yilan and became exhausted? Ning Xuema felt a little guilty. If she did not let the Almighty revive Shui Yilan, perhaps this would not have happened to him. She looked at the flower bud and could not help but sigh. "Almighty God, why didn't you call me when something like this happened? Also, you should be able to recover faster in the water. Why are you cooped up in the quiet room and not coming out? If he came out earlier and soaked in the misty lake, the Almighty would be able to recover faster. I thought I would be able to recover after cultivating for a few more days. I didn't want you to worry about me." The voice in the bud sounded a little muffled. As for why he didn't come out earlier to soak in the misty lake, it was because he knew that the 8 mythological beasts were bathing in the lake almost every day. If he were to come out as a lotus flower, he might be eaten by the 8 mythological beasts. Of course he could open his mouth inside the flower bud, but that would expose his real body. Moreover, he really didn't want to expose his childish appearance in front of the 8 divine beasts. Therefore, he had been enduring in the quiet room and cultivating. The more he cultivated, the more shriveled the flower bud became, until the moment Ning Xuema barged in. Ning Xuema was a little angry. "Guru, we agreed that we'd share blessings and hardships together. You can't not tell me when you're in trouble." Whenever she was in trouble, the first person she thought of was the Almighty God. He had also saved her countless times and helped her solve countless problems. Now that he was in trouble, how could he not tell her? How could he bear it alone? Husband and wife were of the same mind. Did he really see her as a wife that he could rely on? If he could shelter her from the wind and rain, she could also shelter him from the wind and rain. The flower bud flickered with a faint light. "Yes, Xuema. I was wrong." Chapter 2343. The great god actually apologized to her. Ning Xuema's heart softened, and all her anger disappeared. She looked at the flower bud, and a ball of curiosity rose in her heart. What did the great god look like now? Did he still look like the ginseng child when they met at Heavenly Book Mountain? She was actually quite cute when he looked like that. "Great God, can you let me see you?" Ning Xuema saw that the flower bud was becoming more and more translucent, and knew that he was showing signs of improvement. Her curiosity was piqued. There was no movement from the flower bud. Ning Xuema looked at it for a while and finally gave up. "Forget it if you don't want to." The great god was used to being high and mighty, and he was used to being dignified and domineering. It was indeed a challenge for him to show his adorable baby face in front of others. But she really wanted to see him again. The little Nine Zun from back then, the little Nine Zun that she had treated as a ginseng child and had gone through some trials with her. She really wanted to see him again, but since the great god was not willing, she did not want to force him. Just as she finished speaking, the flower bud actually opened slightly, and then, a hand stretched out from inside. It was a small hand with 4 little dimples on the back of it. The hand was indeed small, about the size of a 4 to 5-month-old child, and it looked like it was carved out of white jade. Ning Xuema stared blankly. The hand was so small, like a lotus root melon, making her want to pick it up and take a bite. Disaster. The great god was really a disaster. He had become small, and even his hand could grow so alluring. What was he if not a disaster? Ning Xuema could not help but reach out and poke the small hand with a finger. The small hand immediately held her finger. That scene was exceptionally comical and harmonious. Even Ning Xuema herself was about to be melted by this scene. She really wanted to grab the hand and pull the child out, and then hug him in her arms and give him a few kisses. Ning Xuema only felt a surge of motherly love in her heart. "Xuema?" A young voice came from the flower bud. Ning Xuema subconsciously softened her voice. "If you see my original body, you will have to pay a real price. Do you want to see the whole thing?" The voice of the boy in the bud was as tender as the sound of nature, but the words he said made Ning Xuema shiver uncontrollably. She thought of the price she had paid in those days. She was kneaded into all kinds of shapes by him as if he was kneading dough. His endurance, his transformation. What's the real price? Ning Xuema asked fearlessly. "Xuema, I've been married to you for a few months, but I haven't really enjoyed myself to the fullest." It was obviously a child's voice, but the words he spoke carried a hint of the evilness of an adult. I'll let you see it all once and you'll let me really enjoy myself once in the future. How about that? Ning Shuima, she laughed dryly and decisively withdrew her hand. She said firmly, Great God, I think I should give you some face. I won't look at your original body. Come, you can continue to cultivate. I'll be your guard. The small hand in the bud had no intention of withdrawing. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'm absolutely certain. Ning Shuima patted the little hand. Be good. Go and properly cultivate. He had not enjoyed himself to the fullest, but her back was already aching. If he enjoyed himself to the fullest, she would probably be unable to get out of bed for a few days. There was a chuckle from the flower bud and it finally stopped talking. Because the area had already been cleared and Ning Shuima was standing guard at the side, the lotus bud was able to focus on cultivating in the water without any misgivings. Chapter 2344. 2 hours had passed. 4 hours had passed. Half a day had passed. A day had passed. Then another night had passed. Ning Shuima had been guarding him in the water and did not step on the shore. Shenjiuli tried to persuade her to go back to the room to rest, but Ning Shuima shook her head and refused. She wanted to protect him until he recovered. Of course she did not stay idle in the water. The big lotus that Shenjiuli was in was full of spiritual power. It attracted the fishes and prawns in the lake who wanted to suck the spiritual power from the lotus. However, Ning Shuima managed to drive them away in time. In fact, Shenjiuli could also set up a wizardry barrier, but if he did so, his recovery speed would be a few times slower. Now that he had Ning Shuima by his side, he only needed to focus on his practice. While Ning Shuima was guarding him, she also paid attention to her son's condition. The little thing did not break out of the barrier, but his life was not in danger. She guessed that he was still fighting inside. Little Nianma had already fought 2 battles in the barrier. He knew that the barrier was set up by his father. Although the beasts looked fierce, they would not really kill him. At most, they would hurt him and make him roll a few times. Therefore, when little Nianma encountered the beasts in the rainforest, he was not really afraid. He only needed to use his sword skills. He thought that this situation would continue until the day he broke out of the barrier. However, he did not expect to encounter a tough opponent. For example, the black python that suddenly appeared. The black python seemed to be living a good life in the rainforest. Its scales were round and crystal like jade. It was not the biggest, but once it curled up, it was enough to wrap around little Nianma twice. However, little Nianma fell hard when he was wrapped around by it. The black python was as fast as lightning. It could even spit out poisonous fog. Little Nianma was a little slow in fighting with it, so it wrapped around him. The black python wrapped around his body twice and then tightened its grip in the middle. As everyone knew, once a python wrapped around its prey, it would desperately squeeze the prey's heart until it stopped beating or burst. Once little Nianma was entangled by it, he was immediately suffocated by its enormous strength. His little face turned red. He struggled with all his might, but his hands were also entangled by the black python, so he couldn't break free. The snake was getting tighter and tighter. Little Nianma felt dizzy and his heart was about to explode. His vision turned black and his face gradually turned pale. However, the snake still did not intend to let him go. It was serious. Little Nianma immediately realized that if he did not think of a way to escape, he would really be entangled by the black python. If the son of a god and a devil were to die in the hands of a black python, that would be too shameful. Once a person's life was threatened, he would be able to unleash his full potential. Little Nianma was no exception. In his panic, he actually learned the bone shrinking technique without anyone teaching him. His body instantly shrunk to half its original size. Taking advantage of the fact that the black python had yet to react, he tapped the tip of his foot and soared into the sky. Little Nianma had never suffered such a big loss before. Once he was free, his eyes turned red. At the same time, the black python was enraged when the food that it was about to eat suddenly flew away. It stretched its body and chased after little Nianma. Obviously, it did not want to let him go. Although little Nianma did not understand why such a ferocious creature appeared in his father's array, he knew that he had to die. Now he knew that it was time for him to die. He could not afford to have a glimmer of hope. He also risked his life. Chapter 2345. He was a genius in spells, so he did not pay much attention to physical training. He had only learned a few of the special footwork that his mother had taught him before. Now that he was in a life-or-death situation, the footwork that his mother had taught him was particularly clear in his mind. He immediately performed according to it. At first he was not very familiar with it, but after a while he finally became more flexible and faster. Ning Xuema's footwork was originally a set of footwork for escaping. Once she performed it, even the gods could not catch her. Now little Nianma was performing the footwork on the black python. He was swimming around the black python. It looked very dangerous, but the black python could not even touch a corner of his clothes. After a while, little Nianma finally figured out the black python's movements. Finally he changed from defense to offense and began to attack the black python's weak spot. After an hour, the black python's weak spot had been stabbed several times. Blood was flowing out and its movement was getting slower and slower. Finally he cut off the python's head and it died on the ground. Little Nianma was so tired that he panted. He sat on the ground and stared at the black python's body in a daze. Once he killed the ferocious beasts in the jungle, they would disappear instantly. Only the harmless animals were real. Now, such a fierce and poisonous black python was also real. This time he was afraid that he would have become the black python's food if he was a little slower. More importantly, the black python was highly poisonous. If he did not have the antidote with him, he would be dead this time. Such a dangerous thing could not be released by his father, could it? Who could it be? Little Nianma finally remembered the mysterious man with the ghost face. He clenched his little fists. Needless to say, this black python should be released by that guy. That guy must not be dead. Now he was hiding in a corner and watching him fight for his life. Was that guy Luo Jiuqian? He could not defeat the Divine Lord and the Great Devil, so he secretly came in to plot against him? That guy knew how to possess a body. Could it be that he wanted to kill him and then possess him to plot against his parents? The more little Nianma thought about it, the more likely it was. His whole body was alert. He must not let this person's conspiracy succeed. He had to escape from here and report this matter to his parents. He kicked the black python that couldn't be any more dead, then rubbed his rumbling belly. He steeled his heart and killed the snake. The snake's skin was pitch black, but its flesh was milky white. It was as translucent as the finest cheese. Little Nianma cut off the most delicious part of the python and started a fire to roast it. This time no one fought with him for food. The snake meat was fresh and delicious, and it was unprecedentedly delicious. He happily ate until he was full. After eating, he only felt that his body's strength had doubled, and his fighting spirit was high. Then he strode away. Not long after he left, the mysterious man with the ghost face appeared. He bent down to check the pile of snake meat and skin. He shook his head slightly and looked at the direction where little Nianma left. The little guy was smart enough, and his ability to react on the spot was also very strong. However, it was still not enough. He closed his eyes and waved his hand in the air. A moment later, there was a buzzing sound in the air, and a large black thing rushed into the rainforest. It had a human face, cat ears, and a black bat body. When it spread its wings, it was as big as a basketball. This was the second wave of monsters that little Nianma encountered. Chapter 2346. The monster looked ferocious, and the fangs in its mouth were like 2 rows of sawtooth. Little Nianma saw with his own eyes that the strange bat bit a big blue stone and directly chewed the big blue stone into powder. He had no doubt that if he was bitten by this thing, it would definitely tear off a piece of flesh. What was worse was that this monster was not just one but a group of this kind of monster. Little Nianma was surrounded by a dense swarm of hornets, and he felt as if he had poked a bat's nest. Looking at the dense green eyes around him, little Nianma had goosebumps all over his arms. He had slight trypophobia. With so many bats surrounding him, not to mention attacking him, he felt his scalp go numb. Little Nianma looked at the group of strange bats, and for a moment he could not figure out whether they were real or simulated by the array formation. He could not run away, so he could only fight. The sword in his hand was swinging like a wheel, and he looked for a place where there were fewer bats and rushed over. The sword in his hand was a magical weapon. Even if the ferocious beast had copper skin and iron bones, it would still be cut by his sword. However, when his sword cut the body of the bats, it was as if he was cutting the body of the bats in the water. The body of the bats was so flexible that even if he cut it, there was no wound. There were too many bats and they attacked from all directions. There was a slight flaw in little Nianma's sword, and a bat took advantage of it and bit on the clothes on his chest. The clothes melted quickly as if it was corroded by sulfuric acid. Little Nianma was shocked and did not have time to think. He swung his hand and threw away the clothes on his body. In this way he only had a doo-doo and a pair of underwear on his body, revealing his white little arms. He looked like a boy in a painting. During the fight, little Nianma's arm was bitten by a bat. Although he was able to slap the bat away in time, a little bit of flesh was still torn and green blood flowed out. The wound was even more painful, and it made little Nianma cry out in a low voice. He almost wanted to stomp his feet. If his parents or someone to protect him were around, little Nianma was afraid that he would scream. But now, no matter how serious the injury was, he could only rely on himself. He didn't even have the time to shout. He swallowed an antidote pill and continued to fight. He was already in the middle of the formation and surrounded by the rainforest. No matter where he ran, he would not be able to escape the pursuit of these bats. And in this damned array, he couldn't use his telekinesis. Obviously, these bats were not prepared by his father, but by the mysterious ghost-faced person. Shen Yinma hated the mysterious person to the core. He had been fighting with the bats for a while, but none of them were missing. Instead, he was panting from exhaustion. This won't do. If this went on, once his strength was exhausted, he would become a delicious meal for these bats. During the fight, Shen Yinmo realized that these bats were not afraid of the sword, but they seemed to be afraid of fire. Once a bat got close to the kindling wood, it would immediately fly away. If only he could use his telekinesis, he could use fire attacks. In such a fight, he could hardly see any hope. There were too many bats, and soon there were new wounds on his body. There were a few more bloody wounds on both of his arms, and even his underwear was torn into a beggar's pants. It was almost exposed. Chapter 2347. Fortunately, the bats that tore off his underwear were using their wings. Otherwise, little Nianma would have had to take off his underwear to prevent his skin from being corroded. On the trunk of a large tree, the black-clothed, devil-faced man was sitting there, watching the great battle below. This should be considered as pushing him to the extreme, right? If he was really that person, he should have awakened long ago instead of using such a stupid method to fight. He raised his hand and knocked on the jade on his waist. Actually, you have mistaken him for someone else. How could that person be such a child? He sighed softly and looked at the child who was fighting desperately. Forget it, he did not want to play with him anymore. If he really played with the child's life, the couple would definitely come after him. He raised his hand and was about to do something when he suddenly saw a ray of golden light burst out from little Nianma's body. Although the golden light was very weak, it was still seen by the mysterious man. He was suddenly stunned and withdrew his hand. He looked at the child who was fighting desperately with a complicated expression. The golden light on little Nianma's body also frightened the strange bats. A few of them even screamed and fell to the ground. They twitched a few times and died. Little Nianma felt that there was an inexplicable force in his body when he was fighting desperately. That was why the golden light flashed. When he saw that the golden light was effective, he immediately tried to sense the inexplicable force again. However, he did not expect that the inexplicable force would disappear as well. When he wanted to use it, he could not find it. He occasionally glanced at it during the fight and suddenly saw the man in black sitting on the treetop not far away. He immediately clenched his fists. Sure enough, it was this person who was playing tricks. Seeing that the man curled his fingers and seemed to be about to do something, little Nianma turned his body and suddenly broke through the circle of bats. Like a bullet fired from a gun, he collided with the mysterious man with the ghost face. He used all his strength in this collision and his speed was very fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the man with the ghost face. Although the man with the ghost face was not prepared, after all, he was very skilled in kung fu. He slightly moved his body and dodged. However, he also realized that there was a big tree behind him. As he dodged, little Nianma's head flew toward the big tree and collided with it. If little Nianma was hit, he would be half dead even if his soul was not destroyed. With a wave of her hand, the ghostly face wrapped around little Nianma's waist and dragged him back. Unexpectedly, the child seemed to be waiting for him to make this move, and actually borrowed the force to crash into his arms. This time he could no longer dodge and was hit in the chest by the little fellow's fire arrow mallet. This time, it was as if he had been hit by a hammer. His chest felt heavy and he almost fell from the treetop. With a flick of his hand, he pulled little Nianma's leg and threw him out. Little Nianmo reacted quickly. He spun in the air and stabilized his body. He landed on the top of a tree and stared at the mysterious person with a grimace. He blurted out, "You are a woman." When he bumped into her chest just now, he felt something soft under his scalp, as if he had bumped into a soft mountain. The mysterious person with a grimace was speechless. She looked at the little guy coldly and finally said, "You are naked." Little Nianma was speechless. He subconsciously looked down and saw that his pants were completely gone. Chapter 2348. Little Nianma was speechless. He subconsciously looked down and realized that his pants were gone. He was only left with a rolled-up doo-doo on his body. His body was completely exposed in front of the person. Although little Nianma was still young, he already knew how to behave. His little face blushed and he quickly covered his private parts with his hands. When he looked up again, the person was gone. There was only a piece of cloth left on the spot. Little Nianma quickly took the cloth and shook it to make sure that it was not poisonous. He then wrapped it around his waist. At this time the bats were also gone. Little Nianma was relieved. The mysterious person with the ghost face was actually a woman. This was truly beyond his expectations. Since it was a woman, it was not Luo Jiuchen. Then who could it be? Why did she come in and make things difficult for him? And it almost took his life. Little Nianma could not figure it out, but he was sure of one thing. This woman did not have good intentions toward him. He did not know what she was planning to do, and he did not have a good impression of this woman. A woman dressed as a man and covered her face with such a scary mask. Her real face must be very ugly, so she was psychopathic and came to bully a child like him. Little Nianma could not help but curse when he recalled the dirty tricks that this woman had used on him. Ugly monster, female pervert, why do you always follow me around? There was only the sound of the wind in the rainforest. There was no other movement. The mysterious person with the ghost face did not show up, so it seemed that she had really left. Little Nianma was relieved and did not care about this matter anymore. He continued to look for the way. However, when he looked around, his mind was blown. He had just found the way out, but he didn't expect that in such a short time, the surrounding environment would actually change so drastically. It seemed that someone had added something to the original foundation of the array to make the array more complicated. Now, little Nianma could not find the way out again. He had to start from the beginning. Needless to say, all of this was the credit of the mysterious person with the ghost face. Little Nianma almost cursed the person's ancestors in his heart. Helplessly, he had to look for a way out again. On a big rock at the entrance of the array, the mysterious person in black stood facing the wind. Her clothes were fluttering in the wind. Her fingers gently touched the mask on her face. After a moment, she gently smiled. Ugly freak? Female pervert? This was the first time in the world that someone dared to scold her like this. She glanced at the array again. Suddenly, she raised her hand and rubbed her temples. She sighed. It's actually him. It seems that this mission is a little tricky. Her figure flashed and flew away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Xinjiuli soaked in the lake for a full 5 days before returning to normal. During these 5 days, Ning Xuema kept him company. Of course, she also told him some things such as fishing and fishing for the heavenly Dao stone. Ning Xuema had a feeling that Xinjiuli's transformation into a boy had something to do with the Zen words spoken by the heavenly stone. She shared her doubts with Xinjiuli, but Xinjiuli just hugged her and said, "You've worked hard these days. Let's go back and reward you." He casually caught a few fish and left with Ning Xuema. After the two of them left, the surface of the lake rippled again, and the head of the heavenly Dao stone emerged. There was a row of question marks on its body. Logically speaking, Xinjiuli could not wait to find it and ask for the reason. Why did he not seem to be interested at all? Chapter 2349. Logically speaking, shouldn't Xinjiuli be eager to find out the reason? Why didn't he seem to be interested at all? This was illogical. This person liked to play hard to get. Maybe he was playing hard to get this time. It wouldn't be fooled by him. If he didn't come to find it and say a lot of good things, it wouldn't reveal the secret to him. In less than 3 days, Xinjiuli would definitely find its whereabouts. The heavenly lost stone bubbled in the water and sank to the bottom of the lake. It found that the spiritual power at the bottom of the lake was the thickest, and it was very comfortable there. More importantly, the lake could block its breath. If Xinjiuli wanted to find it, it would take a few days, but the heavenly lost stone obviously miscalculated. 3 days had passed and Xinjiuli still didn't have the intention to find it. It didn't know what he was thinking. The heavenly lost stone couldn't hold it anymore. It thought that it was hiding too well, so Xinjiuli couldn't find it for a while. Then it wouldn't hide anymore. The heavenly lost stone was the highest existence, and it wouldn't lower itself to the guardian's level. So, the heavenly lost stone jumped out of the misty lake and returned to the lonely peak where it used to live. There it waited for Xinjiuli's arrival. It stood on the lonely peak for 3 days in the cold wind, but Xinjiuli still didn't show up. Could it be that he had found this place before so he didn't come again? It was dark under the light. The more the heavenly lost stone thought about it, the more it thought about it. So, it moved in the night and landed directly in front of Xinjiuli's bedroom. Now he couldn't possibly not see it, right? Of course, it didn't want him to laugh at it for sending itself to the door. So, it landed behind a rock on the left side of the door of the bedroom. It squeezed among several rocks, indicating that it was here to enjoy the scenery. It listened carefully. The bedroom was quiet, which meant that the couple hadn't returned yet. These few days the couple lived very comfortably. They traveled together and stayed together, almost inseparable. Probably because the child was still in the array, the two of them didn't leave the Fanteon Palace and stayed at home. But even if they didn't go out, the two of them still lived happily. They played chess, played the zither, fished, and he even taught her how to draw. The love between the two of them simply made the eyes of the 8 mythological beasts blue with envy. It was a pity that the 8 mythological beasts were all male beasts. Otherwise they would also want to form a pair and live a happy life. The heavenly lost stone stood among a pile of rocks. Occasionally, it would hear the gossip of the 8 divine beasts as it passed by. It sneered in its heart. A supreme god and a devil lord had so many responsibilities on their shoulders. How could they live such an ordinary life? They were going to be busy soon. That night, the wizardry barrier in midair finally opened, and little Nianma fell straight to the ground. When he landed, it was around midnight and the Fanteon Palace was quiet. He thought that his parents were already asleep and heaved a sigh of relief. He was about to run towards his Qingxiao hall. Just as he turned around, he was stunned again. His parents were sitting in an octagonal pavilion not far away. There was a luminous pearl in the pavilion that reflected the soft light on the chessboard on the stone table. The black and white chess pieces on the board were fighting fiercely. At this moment, his father was holding a black chess piece in his hand and looking at him with a faint smile. His mother was holding her chin with her hand and waving at him lovingly. "Nianma, congratulations. You have finally passed the test. Come to mother." In the past, little Nianma couldn't wait to hear this. He was afraid that his mother would only need to beckon with her finger and directly rush over to her to ask for kisses and hugs. Chapter 2350. But now, little Nianma could not help but shrink back into the shadow. He even pulled down the piece of cloth that was wrapped around his waist. Little Nianma was actually very embarrassed at the moment. His upper body was wearing a small doudou that was badly worn and could not cover his belly. His lower body was wrapped tightly with a piece of cloth, revealing his white arms and legs. His little face was also covered with gray and white streaks. He looked like a little kitten. Little Nianma had his father's misophobia genes in his bones. Usually he would always be clean. His little robe was smooth on his body, and there would not be a single wrinkle on it. It was the first time for him to be as messy as a little beggar today. He felt a little embarrassed and did not want his parents to see him like this. When he was breaking the array, he was full of anger. He wanted to appear in front of his parents proudly after breaking the array. However, he did not expect that, thus he shrank back into the shadows again. Just as he was about to go back to his room, there was a gentle breeze in front of his eyes. His mother had already appeared in front of him. She picked him up and quickly looked him up and down. Then she checked the injuries on his body. Her brows immediately furrowed. "Why are you in such a sorry state? Did the ferocious beasts really hurt you?" As she spoke, she glanced at her husband who was next to her. Shenjiuli had personally told her that although there were ferocious beasts in the array, they would not really hurt little Nianma. He was scared but not in danger. But what was going on now? There were wounds on little Nianma's body. There were cuts, lacerations, and even pecks. Some of the wounds even looked very dangerous. If they were a little more to the side, they could have hurt his vital parts. Although Ning Xuema did not object to her husband's training of their son, when she saw her son injured like this, she was worried. She was about to treat her son. Shenjiuli reached out his hand. Little Nianma, who was originally in Ning Xuema's arms, was dazzled. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in his father's arms. "Let me treat him." Shenjiuli raised his hand to cast a cleaning spell on his son. Ning Xuema suddenly rushed over and took her son away. She said coldly, "You don't need to care about him." With his son in his arms, he dashed toward the pharmacy in a flash and disappeared in an instant. Shenjiuli, naturally he followed along. But Ning Xuema was so fast that she arrived at the pharmacy in the blink of an eye and locked Shenjiuli outside the door. The door slammed shut and almost hit Shenjiuli's nose. Shenjiuli took a step back. Was she angry? This was the first time Ning Xuema had lost her temper at him since the two of them got married. He raised his hand and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. A dark look flashed across his eyes. He was a medical expert. With just one look, he knew what kind of danger his son had encountered. He didn't expect that person to be so ruthless as to deal such a heavy blow to a child. No matter what little Nianma used to be, he was now his son and his wife's precious baby. He would not allow anyone to humiliate him. He lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. In the end he pushed the door open and walked in. In the pharmacy, Ning Xuema had already treated her son's injuries. Little Nianma's injuries were basically superficial. Because he had been poisoned before, although he had taken the antidote, there was still some residual poison in his body. Therefore his injuries were a little bruised. Although little Nianma had some medical skills, he was not good at it. Moreover, because he had been running for his life and fighting, the injuries on his body were wrapped up. Chapter 2351. His body was originally tender and white, which made the wounds on his body even more obvious. There were many wounds on his body and there were even 2 on his thighs. Ning Xuema was worried that her son's vital parts would be hurt, so she wanted to take off the cloth to have a look. Unexpectedly, little Nianma blushed and covered the cloth with both of his little hands. "Mother, I am not hurt there." Ning Xuema was stunned. She looked at her son and had an idea. Was her son shy? Could it be? He was not even a year old. She looked at her son and vaguely felt that there was something different about her son. He seemed to have grown up overnight and was very sensible. "Xuema, let me do it." Xinjiuli was finally able to take over. Ning Xuema nodded. His father should be fine after checking it. Children did not know the severity of the situation. If there was really an injury, it would be fatal. She took a step back and gave Xinjiuli the position. Xinjiuli was about to reach out his hand, but little Nianma was still holding the cloth tightly. "I'm really not hurt there. You don't have to check it." Xinjiuli paused for a moment and looked into little Nianma's eyes. "Nianma, you are the son of a deity and a devil. You must be responsible. You should not hide your illness for fear of treatment. I only want to hear the truth from you." Little Nianma hurriedly said, "I am telling the truth. I am really not hurt." Xinjiuli nodded slightly. "I believe you." Sure enough, he did not check his body. Little Nianma was relieved. To be honest, he did not know that it was embarrassing to be naked. However, ever since the woman said that he was naked, he seemed to have been enlightened. Ning Xuema looked at her son, whose face was still a little red. She was quite amused. The anger that she felt when she saw her son was injured was greatly reduced. Xinjiuli's medicine was naturally the best. With the help of Xinjiuli's telekinesis, little Nianma's injuries were healed very quickly. Ning Xuema chatted with little Nianma as she watched her husband heal her son. Ask him about what it was like to be in the army. Little Nianma initially wanted to complain to his parents, but he suddenly remembered the letter that he saw at the entrance of the array when he was trying to break the array. It was written in a flamboyant style, "Baby, if you leave the array, you can ask your parents to avenge you." Little Nianma was furious. He did not want the woman to look down on him anymore. If she wanted to take revenge, she should rely on her own abilities and not tell her parents. Only those good-for-nothing brats would do that. Now that he heard Ning Xuema ask about it, he steeled his heart and didn't mention anything about the mysterious man with the ghost face. He used other excuses to gloss over it. Ning Xuema didn't know the truth. She thought that there was indeed a problem with her husband's array formation. She couldn't help but glare at Xinjiuli. Xinjiuli didn't say a word. He just looked at his son with a faint smile. There seemed to be a dark light flowing in his eyes. Little Nianma was shocked by his father's gaze. He always had an illusion that his father had seen through him. Therefore he moved closer to his mother. Ning Xuema felt guilty for her son. After the wounds on his body were treated, she carried him and left. "My son, sleep with me tonight." This was the benefit that little Nianma had been fighting for many times. Now that he suddenly got it, he was stunned and subconsciously looked at his father. Xinjiuli was casually playing with a white jade flute in his hand. He looked at him thoughtfully. Little Nianma felt a chill in his heart. Was his father planning to throw him into some kind of array formation again? Chapter 2352. Little Nianma felt a chill in his heart. Was his father planning to throw him into some kind of array formation again? No. He had just been trapped in the array for 10 days. He was hungry, sleepy, and tired. He just wanted to find a big bed and have a good night's sleep. He did not want to be tortured again. He opened his mouth and was about to reject, but Xinjiuli spoke first. "Well, sleep with us tonight." Ning Xuema looked at Xinjiuli and Xinjiuli said, "Nianma has never slept with us before." Nianma's eyes immediately lit up and he nodded. Ning Xuema was stunned for a moment, but she did not say anything else. Nianma, can you walk on your own? Shinjuli asked his son again. Shin Nianma immediately nodded. Yes. He had no problem walking on his own. How about we hold your hand and walk together? Shinjuli made a new suggestion. Sure. Little Nianma immediately agreed with a joyful tone. Therefore, the family of three held hands and walked back to the bedroom together. Little Nianma was very happy and satisfied. The feeling of walking hand in hand with his family was very good, and he had no other thoughts. Ning Xuema's heart was on her son, so she naturally did not pay attention to other things. As for Shinjuli, his eyes were on the mother and daughter and he did not look around. Just like that, the family of three walked into the bedroom. No one noticed the heavenly lost stone squatting at the door of the bedroom. No one even looked at it. The heavenly lost stone was depressed. Although it was in a pile of stones, the pile of stones was green and only it was white. How distinct. How eye-catching. However, the family of three did not see it. They did not see it. The wind blew, and the falling petals on the top of the heavenly lost stone danced in the wind. It was a little sad. The heavenly lost stone felt that it needed to soak in water to calm down and think about the next step. It silently flew to the side of the misty lake. Just as it was about to dive in, it suddenly sensed something and looked at a big tree not far away. It was deep into the night and a dark person was sitting on a dark tree. A black robe, a black mask and long black hair. Everything was black as if it wanted to become one with the tree. The man sat there, hugging his knees as he stared at the lake, seemingly lost in thought. The heavenly Tao stone didn't recognize a person based on their appearance, but the soul hidden underneath. Therefore, no matter how skilled a person was in disguise or how skilled they were in disguise, they wouldn't be able to escape the heavenly Tao stone's eyes. Unless that person's kung fu had reached an incredible level such as Shinjuli, the current Ning Xuema or the former Luo Jiuchen. There were only a few of them. But now, it actually couldn't see the true appearance of this black-clothed man. It only felt that the other party was hidden in the clouds, and it couldn't even see through the other party's mask. The black-clothed man seemed to have sensed something, and he looked at the heavenly Tao stone. Then, his body moved and he suddenly stood in front of the heavenly Tao stone. The heavenly Tao stone did not move. The black-clothed man's eyes flashed. This is... He reached out a hand to touch the top of the heavenly Tao stone. Crack! A bolt of lightning suddenly appeared and struck down towards the black-clothed masked man. The black-clothed man raised his black sleeves and flicked his fingertips. A pale golden light flew out and collided with the lightning. Chi! With a soft sound, the lightning disappeared, and the pale golden light also disappeared. The ground returned to normal. Chapter 2353. The heavenly lost stone shook slightly, and the masked man took a step back. The masked man raised his hand and looked at his fingertips. Then he looked at the ordinary-looking stone and smiled. Then he turned around and disappeared. The heavenly lost stone was speechless. This person's kung fu was also top-notch. It seemed that he was not much worse than Shinjuli and Ning Xuema. What made the heavenly lost stone even more puzzled was that it smelled a very familiar scent from this person. Also, the Fantian Palace was not a place that could be entered as one wished. However, this person came and went as he pleased. He did not care about the restrictions of the Fantian Palace at all. Who was this person? While the heavenly lost stone was speculating, a person in a white robe landed in front of it with a gentle breeze. Shinjuli. The heavenly lost stone froze and did not react for a while. He finally came to look for it. It knew that he would come to look for it. However, it did not expect him to come so suddenly. The heavenly lost stone did not know whether it should ignore him or jump into the water proudly. Do you have something to say to me? Shinjuli went straight to the point without beating around the bush. The heavenly lost stone was speechless. It proudly typed, I think you should have a problem that you want to ask me. Shinjuli looked at the proud stone and seemed to be surprised. He raised his eyebrows and asked, What problem should I ask you? The heavenly lost stone was speechless. Why did it feel that there was something wrong with this conversation? Shouldn't he be the one begging it and then asking it to show him the way? Don't you think it's strange that you suddenly became small? The heavenly lost stone felt that it should remind him. Shinjuli looked at it and said casually, It's not strange. When I was in the Tianxi continent, I became small once every few years. The heavenly lost stone typed again, That was the Tianxi continent. Not the mythical continent. If you were in the mythical continent, you would be punished by the heavenly law. Shinjuli hugged his arms and said, What did I do to deserve the punishment of the heavenly Tao? The stone of heavenly axiom said earnestly, The heavenly axiom is good at reincarnation. Supreme Divinity must have heard that the mandate of heaven is hard to go against. However, Supreme Divinity has never taken the mandate of heaven seriously. Who knows how many people's fates you have changed? It is only natural that the heavenly axiom will punish you. What's the specific punishment? Xinjuli was still indifferent. The heavenly Tao stone said, you will return to your youth once every 3 months, and the cycle will be longer each time. For example, if you needed 5 days to recover, you'll need 7 days the next time and 9 days after that. Xinjuli. If that was the case, then he would be in his child state for a few years. This punishment wasn't just any normal perverted punishment. In this world there was nothing that Xinjuli was afraid of. Although he was the guardian of the heavenly Tao stone, it was just because he was happy to do it. It did not mean that he had to respect the heavenly Tao. He did things according to his heart and had his own principles. He did not care about anything. Now it seemed that there were some rules that he still had to abide by, because he really could not do anything about the heavenly Tao now. Xinjuli lowered his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly he asked, when was this punishment handed down? Is it really from the heavenly Tao? The heavenly Tao stone said, I only receive orders from the heavenly Tao. This punishment is naturally from the heavenly Tao. Xinjuli asked again, have you seen the heavenly Tao before? The heavenly Tao stone. It really had not seen the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao's orders seemed to have been set in advance, and it would automatically receive them at a certain time. Chapter 2354. However, as the heavenly law stone, it would be too embarrassing if it said that it had never seen the heavenly law before. It could not lie to its guardian, so the heavenly law stone only responded with a humph, and did not answer the question. Xinjuli looked at it with a smile. If the heavenly law was standing in front of you, would you be able to recognize it? The heavenly law stone was speechless. It should be able to recognize it, right? Besides, the heavenly law was said to have melted into all things in the world and had no substance. How could it be standing in front of it? Xinjuli did not want to dwell on this question. Is there a way to resolve this punishment? How can it be resolved? He finally got to the point. The heavenly law stone immediately perked up. It finally told him the way to resolve the punishment. Xin Yinma suddenly realized that his parents had been spending more time with him. His father no longer threw him into the array every now and then. Instead, he let him stay by his side like a normal child. In 2 months the family of 3 went out to play 3 times. Each time it would be more than 10 days. They visited all the famous mountains and rivers in the 6 worlds and got used to the local customs of the 6 worlds. Xinjuli even took them to visit some of his friends. Xinjuli was indifferent, and his friends were all eccentric. There was a chess master, a martial arts fanatic, an array master, and a drunkard. These people lived in seclusion in a wizardry barrier and did not care about the world. Some of them lived in seclusion in the city. Some of them lived in seclusion in a famous mountain and river. They spent every day with the wind and the moon and did not talk to the mortals. Every single one of these people was an outstanding talent in their respective fields. When they cultivated a certain skill to the peak, they couldn't help but feel a sense of loneliness at the top, and wanted to find an opponent to defeat. Xinjuli had a wide range of hobbies. He had practiced every skill to the peak. Naturally, he became the target of these people. Therefore, Xinjuli did not hesitate to defeat them. Usually the result of a fight was that they could not make a deal. They became Xinjuli's friends. Although these people were eccentric and difficult to get along with, they respected Xinjuli very much and valued his children even more. Xinjuli was also strange. Every time they arrived at a place, he would let little Nianma compete with the host so that these people could test little Nianma's ability. Nianma was still young, so his skills were not as good as those of the masters who were already at the peak of their power. However, it was enough to show his extraordinary talent. Everyone was amazed and congratulated the Divine Lord for having a successor. Everyone liked smart geniuses and little Nianma was so adorable. These people were eager to take him as their apprentice and teach him all the skills they were proud of. However, they also understood that he was the son of the Supreme Divinity and would be personally taught by the Supreme Divinity. No matter how much these people liked him, they could only envy him. Unexpectedly, Xinjuli smiled gracefully when he heard their praise and asked if they were willing to accept a disciple. This was simply a pie that fell from the sky. How could these people not be willing? He immediately nodded. However, Xinjuli also had his own conditions. That was, his son could be the apprentice of any of them. However, it was not limited to only one of them. He could be the apprentice of more than one. This was actually a taboo at that time because in the philosophy of the people at that time, there could only be one apprentice. Otherwise, it was considered a betrayal of the master, which was despised by the people. Fortunately, Shinjuli's friends did not play by the rules and did not pay much attention to these red tape. Besides, it was also an honor to have the son of the supreme divinity as their apprentice. Moreover, little Nianma was such a talented child. Naturally, they agreed. Chapter 2355. Therefore, after Shinjuli's family of 3 went around, little Nianma had 10 super powerful masters. Little Nianma was at the age where he was eager to learn new things. As a child, it was easy for him to admire the strong. Moreover, the 10 masters were all real talents. Therefore, little Nianma was very happy when he first became a disciple. He had even more fun when he was with his parents. Since he was born, he had been through a lot of difficulties. He either did not have a father or a mother. Finally, both of his parents were alive, but his father trained him hard and often threw him into the array. Now, he finally had the opportunity to travel with his parents. Naturally, he was very happy and excited. As a child, he was very competitive and wanted to surpass his father. Therefore, he also wanted to learn the skills of others. Therefore, he did not hesitate to become a disciple. However, when he became a disciple of the next few masters, he seemed to have noticed something and was a little reluctant. "Father, why do you want me to have so many masters? I think that although some of their skills are very good, they are still not as good as you. I want you and mother to teach me personally. I don't want so many masters." When it came to the 10th master, little Nianma finally could not help but burst out. "Nianma, if you want to be really strong, you have to learn from others. Also, you have to experience more outside to grow. It is not right to always stay with your parents." Shinjuli educated him. "But 10 masters are too many. If each of them teaches me for a year, I will have to learn for 10 years. These 10 masters have their own strengths and are outstanding in their own way. Nianma, we hope that you can become really strong and not be controlled by anyone or anything." Ning Xuema hugged her son and comforted him. Even his mother, who had always loved him, said so. Little Nianma knew that it was a foregone conclusion and could not be changed. He looked at Ning Xuema and asked, "Mother, are you hiding something from me?" He always felt that something was not right with his parents, but after all, he was still young and could not figure out what was wrong. Ning Xuema was heartbroken. She hugged her son and kissed his forehead. "Nianma, no matter what, we only want you to be well. Don't think too much." Little Nianma was a little greedy for the warmth of his mother's embrace. He was still a little worried, so he snuggled into Ning Xuema's arms and said, "Mother, don't abandon me again. We have to be together forever. I will be a good boy and listen to you." Ning Xuema's face turned slightly pale. She felt as if a knife had pierced her heart. She didn't want to be separated from her son, but, therefore she hugged her son even tighter and smiled. "Silly boy, of course we will not abandon Nianma. Never." However, Nianma the child could not stay with his parents all the time. He had to go to school to study and interact with other children. The masters that your father found for you are not only skilled, but they also have many disciples. If you go, you can have some playmates. Don't you want to play with other children? Little Nianma was a little tempted by Gu Shizhou's words. It was true that he rarely played with children of his own age. In fact, he was eager to play with children of his own age. It was a very lively birthday banquet. The first birthday banquet of the son of the Divine Lord and the Great Devil was naturally very grand. All the famous people in the 6 realms were there. Among them were Yi Qianli, who had already become the Celestial Emperor, and the 10 masters of little Nianma. During the banquet, Shinjuli publicly announced that little Nianma would be apprenticed to the 10 masters. Chapter 2356. Although most of these 10 masters were hermits, their bearing was still there. At a glance, one could tell that they were extraordinary and not to be trifled with. Normally, it was extremely difficult to acknowledge one of them as a master, and one would even have to overcome all obstacles. Little Nianma at such a young age had been apprenticed to 10 of them. It was indeed unprecedented. Naturally, everyone congratulated him. Of course, there were many people who were jealous of him. The hall was full of laughter. While everyone was celebrating, Shinjuli suddenly pointed up. "It is cold and windy on the roof. My friend, you should come down." A white light flashed and a big hole appeared on the roof. A person in a light green robe floated down. Everyone was surprised. No one expected that there would be someone who dared to eavesdrop in the hall of Fantian Palace. The person had a ghost mask on his face, and the robe on his body was so loose that no one could tell his gender. His appearance naturally caused a commotion. Ning Xuema narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the person with a smile. Are you passing by again? That person was the mysterious ghost mask. She did not panic when she came in. She smiled gently. No, this time I am here to give your son a birthday gift. She turned her hands and a small box appeared in her palms. The box was made of agar wood with exquisite carvings. What was more dazzling was that the box was inlaid with the best quality emerald. Just by looking at the box, one could tell that the gift was precious. She took a few steps forward and came to little Nianma. She handed the box to him. Here, this is for you. Happy birthday. When little Nianma saw her, his whole body became nervous. His fingers clenched in his sleeves and looked at her coldly. He wanted to see what new trick she was playing. Although the box was novel, little Nianma was not interested. He did not have the slightest intention to take it. What? You don't dare to take it? Are you afraid that a snake will jump out and bite you? The mysterious ghost mask seemed to be joking and serious at the same time. Little Xuema looked at her and then looked at the box in her hand. Suddenly she laughed. Trying to provoke me? It is useless for you to provoke me. I just don't want your things. The mysterious ghost-faced person's eyes flickered for a moment before she put the box back into her storage space. She smiled and said, That's good. I didn't really want to give it to you. If you don't want it, it means that you have no fate with it. Shen Yanma was speechless. He didn't expect that this person would back off just like that. He felt like he had stepped on empty air. He was suddenly curious about the contents of the box. What exactly was inside? Thinking about it again, this person couldn't have been exposed by his father, so in order to cover up his identity, he casually took out a treasure and said that it was a gift so that he could get away with it, right? If he didn't want it, it would be exactly what she wanted. The more Shen Yanma thought about it, the more he felt that he had been tricked by her again. He did not like this person, so naturally he did not want her to get what she wanted. After pondering for a while, he immediately put on a smile and pulled the person's sleeve. Auntie, it is not easy for you to come all the way here. Since you are here to give me a birthday present, how can I not give you face? I was just joking just now. How can I not want your present? Little Nianma's voice was crisp and clear. Everyone in the hall could hear it. Everyone was stunned. Even Ning Xuema stared blankly for a moment. Her gaze swept over the mysterious ghost-faced person. Chapter 2357. Even Ning Xuema stared blankly for a moment. Her gaze swept over the mysterious person's body. This person was actually a woman. Her eyes were very sharp. Usually, a woman dressed as a man would not be able to hide from her eyes. However, she was wrong this time. She did not realize that the mysterious person who was almost as famous as Shinjuli was actually a woman. Shinjuli's eyes fell on his son. He was deep in thought. The mysterious woman was stunned when little Nianma exposed her identity on the spot. When she saw the little kid pulling her sleeve and calling her auntie, she was a little annoyed. She wanted to shake off the little boy's hand, but little Nianma seemed to have noticed that she was going to do that. He let go of her sleeve and took a step back. His beautiful little face was full of smiles. One of his little hands even reached out as if he was waiting for her to give the gift to him. The mysterious person was speechless. She looked at little Nianma's proud face and suddenly smiled. You have already rejected it, which means that you are not destined to have it. However, since you still want it, fine, I will give you another chance. However, this thing is very proud. Whether it belongs to you or not, it depends on your fate. After she finished speaking, the box appeared in her palm again. It doesn't matter if you want this thing, but you have to open it here. He would open it on the spot. Even if a snake came out of it, he would not be afraid. Little Nianma agreed without hesitation. Only then did the mysterious grimace person pass the box to him. Everyone's interest was piqued by her words, and they all widened their eyes as they watched the scene unfold. This person was obviously playing hard to get. Ning Xuema frowned slightly. She was about to quietly move to her son's side to prevent any accidents. Shinjuli held her wrist and gently shook his head. Although Ning Xuema did not know the intention of her husband, she knew that he must have his reasons. Therefore she did not move forward. She only made a spell with her fingers in her sleeve. She would immediately take action if she felt that something was wrong. That box was an extremely intricate mechanical item. It was seamless without any gaps. After Shen Yanma took the box, he touched it here and there. She did not know what he found, but he opened the box with a snap. The mysterious grimace man's fingers suddenly tightened. He actually opened the box. It was really him. The others did not know, so they did not feel strange when little Nianma opened the box. However, she knew very well that this box could only be opened by a specific person. Even if it was her, she couldn't do anything about it. She had wandered around in this world for so many years. She had gone to the ends of the earth and finally found this person. Although this person was very different from what she had imagined, she still found him. She looked at little Nianma with a complicated expression. No one could read her emotions from her eyes. Little Nianma did not know what was going on in the mysterious person's mind. Like most of the people around him, he was attracted by the items in the box. As soon as the box was opened, a golden light shot out. There was a golden snake in the box. The snake was not big. It was only about a foot long. Its scales were as dazzling as gold. Its body was obviously like a snake, but there were two coral-like horns on the top of its head. What was more strange was that the snake seemed to be covered with a layer of faint golden light, which was quite similar to the light of Buddha. Chapter 2358. Furthermore, this snake actually had long eyelashes. Those eyelashes were also light gold in color. Because its eyes were closed, those eyelashes gave off an extremely delicate feeling. The moment the box was opened, the snake's eyes that had been closed all this time suddenly opened. Those eyeballs were the color of black jade, and there seemed to be a luster flowing within them. Those who were staring at the box only felt their vision blur, as if their souls were being sucked away and they felt dizzy. Little Nianma did not feel anything at all. He stared at the golden snake in the box and felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Although the eyes of the golden snake were black, the light that it emitted was light golden. The golden light reflected on little Nianma's body as if he was coated with a layer of golden light. What was more strange was that the golden light reflected on the back of little Nianma's head and formed a circle. Ning Xuema looked at her son and was moved. Little Nianma looked like the Buddha with his own light of Buddha. Of course, it was only a statue of the Buddha. Her little Nianma was extraordinarily handsome and definitely did not look like the Buddha. Moreover, the Buddha's light of Buddha was golden, but at this moment, the light of Buddha on little Nianma's body was light golden with 7 colors. It flowed freely and people could not take their eyes off it. Little Nianma blinked his eyes, and the golden snake blinked its eyes as well. Suddenly the golden light flashed, and the snake suddenly wrapped around little Nianma's wrist. Ning Xuema's heart was alarmed. Her hands were about to form a seal. However, Shinjioli held her wrist again. He sent her a directed audio, "Don't move. The hornless dragon will not hurt him." Hornless dragon? The little snake was actually a hornless dragon? However, did the hornless dragon not have horns? She remembered that the hornless dragon was a hornless dragon in the myths and legends that she had read. How could the hornless dragon's head have such beautiful horns? Shinjioli seemed to have guessed her doubts. He continued to explain to her through telepathy, "The hornless dragon king has horns. Also, those myths and legends are just legends. They are based on reality." Ning Xuema suspected that Shinjioli could read her mind. He seemed to know what she was thinking clearly. However, his explanation was reasonable. After all, myths and legends were just legends. They were often worlds apart from the truth and couldn't be believed. Ning Xuema looked at the hornless dragon again and truly felt that the hornless dragon was rather good-looking. Little Nianma was a little traumatized by snakes, but he did not feel disgusted by the hornless dragon, which looked like a snake. The scales on the hornless dragon were as clear as jade. It was cool and smooth when it wrapped itself around his wrist, but it was very comfortable. It did not give him the creepy feeling of being entangled by a snake. The hornless dragon circled around his wrist 3 times. Suddenly, it flashed and turned into a bracelet with the pattern of a hornless dragon. It was firmly on little Nianma's wrist. Little Nianma frowned slightly. He had an illusion that he was bound by a mission. He raised his hand and wanted to take the bracelet off, but the bracelet seemed to be attached to his wrist and could not be removed. He tried for a long time but to no avail. Little Nianma was a little annoyed. "Hey, I don't wear a bracelet. Yours truly is not a woman. Take your bracelet back. I don't want it anymore." After a few words, he realized that he could not find his target. The mysterious woman with the ghost face had disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on the hornless dragon on little Nianma's wrist. No one noticed when the woman left. Ning Xuema slightly clenched her fingers. The woman disappeared into thin air. She did not turn around and leave. Chapter 2359. Little Nianmo received a lot of gifts for his birthday, but the gift from the lady was the weirdest because he could not take it off. However, the gift had a rather powerful function. Little Nianma's body, which had not developed for a year, finally grew. He used to look like a 3 or 4-year-old, but soon after he put on the bracelet he grew a lot taller. After the birthday party he already looked like a 7 or 8-year-old. Fortunately, the size of his clothes could be adjusted according to his height. Otherwise he would have been naked on the spot. After the birthday party, little Nianma was taken away by a master who was the best at practicing spells. He began his journey of cultivation. This master may not be as good as Shinjioli in other aspects, but he had many disciples in the 6 realms. What made little Nianma even more excited was that this master had just recruited a group of 7 or 8-year-old disciples. There were more than a dozen of them. He finally had a playmate. In order to become Shin Nianma's first master, the master brought 2 disciples with him. One was a boy and the other was a girl. Both of them were smart and handsome. In less than half a day the 3 children had already started to play together. Therefore, when little Nianma left with his master, although he was still reluctant to part with his parents, he did not cry so much. She looked at the cloud that carried her son away and gradually disappeared. All the guests had also left, and the Fantian Palace returned to its usual peace. Ning Xuema stood there and looked at the direction where her son went. She and her son had always been separated more than they were together. This time she did not know when they would meet again. Shinjioli held her hand and sighed. "Xuema, I am sorry." Ning Xuema leaned into his embrace and hugged his waist. She shook her head slightly. "I chose this path myself. You don't need to feel apologetic. What we're doing is letting down our son. He's still so young." He is not young. When he was the Divine Lord's age, he had already established his own clan. The heavenly law stone next to them began to express its disapproval. Ning Xuema turned her attention back to the heavenly law stone. "Heavenly law stone, I don't understand. Nianma has it in the other world. Why can't he go to the other world? He was born in this world and belongs to this world. Furthermore, he has his own mission. Naturally he cannot leave." It turned out that in order to break the heavenly Tao's punishment on Shinjioli, Shinjioli had to do 3 things and reverse the fates of 3 people. 2 of them were in the Tianxi continent, so he had to return to the Tianxi continent. Everyone knew that the passageways leading to the outside world had all disappeared. If Shinjioli wanted to go back, he would have to borrow the power of the heavenly Tao stone. On the other hand, the heavenly stone would consume more than half of its power to carry the 2 of them through transmigration. It would take 10 years for it to recover. Only after it had recovered would it be possible to send the 2 of them back. However, little Nianma could not go with them. According to the heavenly Tao stone, if little Nianma forced himself to go with them, he would lose all his power. When he arrived at the other world he might even disappear. Therefore they could not take him with them. Of course, they were worried about leaving little Nianma alone in the celestial devil continent. Therefore Shinjioli found 10 masters for his son. Each of them taught him for a year, so 10 years would pass. Moreover, with these 10 masters looking after the little guy, no one would dare to bully him. Shinjioli and his wife could rest assured. Chapter 2360. Shinjioli and his wife were the Divine Lord and the Great Devil respectively. Both of them held important positions in the continent. Logically speaking, they should not leave easily. If anyone knew that they were going to be away for 10 years, there would be a lot of twists and turns in the 6 realms. Therefore, even if they were to leave, they had to do it secretly and not tell anyone. After all, little Nianma was still too young to understand many things. If they told him in advance, he would probably cry endlessly and follow them regardless of the consequences. Also, when he was with others, he might leak it in a few words. It would be bad if someone with ulterior motives heard it. Therefore, they could not even tell little Nianma about this trip. However, it was impossible to hide this matter from the child for 10 years. After a year, Shin Nianma would definitely return to the Fantian Palace. Shinjioli left a letter for his son in the palace that only he could open to explain the matter. By then, Nianma would have grown up and experienced a lot. He would be able to accept this matter and keep it a secret. In short, the 2 of them were fully prepared for this matter and considered all kinds of situations. They also made arrangements for the 8 mythological beasts. 4 of them would secretly protect Shin Nianma, and the other 4 would stay in the Fantian Palace. The only thing Ning Xuema was worried about was the mysterious person. She always felt that the person seemed to be harboring evil intentions towards her son. Shinjioli only rubbed her head. "Don't worry. That person will not really harm Nianma. At most, the little guy will suffer a little. If it is really necessary, she will save him." Ning Xuema looked at him and was a little suspicious. "Great master, you are good at calculation. Have you calculated something?" Shinjioli leisurely said, The heavenly secrets should not be revealed. Ning Xuema looked at him with a smile. Why are you keeping me in suspense? Shinjuli sighed. Xuema, I was punished this time because I revealed too many heavenly secrets. If I reveal it again, I don't know if the punishment will be worse. But if you really want to know, I don't mind telling you. Don't? Ning Xuema put a finger on his lips to stop him from talking. You don't have to talk to me. As long as that person doesn't really harm my son. The heavenly Tao stone was already glowing. All right, it's getting late. You should be on your way. 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye. For Rong Yu Tianlan, who had lived for an unknown number of years, 100 years was nothing at all. However, he felt that the past few decades had been somewhat torturous because his friend, the ancestor of Buddha Lotus Mountain, had not appeared even once. Originally, this venerable sovereign would harass him once a year, ask him to play chess, pick his fruits, and even occasionally exchange a few moves with him. At that time he felt that he was at a disadvantage. A dignified deity lived like a follower of the venerable sovereign. However, after not seeing him for 100 years, he felt that life was as lonely as snow. Life was not so fun. On this day he was picking a kind of blue fruit in the courtyard. This kind of fruit was the best for brewing wine. The wine it brewed was mellow and sweet, and the alcohol content was not small. This kind of fruit could only be brewed once a year. In the past, the venerable sovereign would drink it when he came here. Every time, Rong Yu Tianlan would feel extremely pained. Now, Rong Yu Tianlan's wine cellar had accumulated 100 jars, but the person who often came to drink wine was still nowhere to be seen. Venerable sovereign, will you never come back? Rong Yu Tianlan sighed while holding a bunch of fruits. Buzz. Whoosh. A strange sound suddenly came from the sky. Chapter 2361. Rong Yuishanlin raised his head, and his expression changed. A ball of snow-white light was rushing towards him at lightning speed. What was that? Rong Yuishanlin raised his hand, and a blue light blasted towards the white light. Just as the blue light was about to hit the white light, which was like a small sun, suddenly moved 10 feet in the air. Then, with a flash, a bolt of lightning struck towards Rong Yuishanlin. The speed of the lightning was unbelievably fast. Rong Yuishanlin hurriedly retreated to the side, and the lightning struck the soles of his feet. With a loud bang, Rong Yuishanlin's ears almost went deaf. It also directly smashed the blue stone into pieces. With this loud bang, the white light also landed on the ground, and then a pit suddenly appeared on the ground. Rong Yuishanlin watched as his precious tree was directly smashed into the ground. When all the dust settled, Rong Yuishanlin took a closer look, and the blue veins on his forehead jumped. There was a huge pit in the originally flat ground. At the bottom of the pit, there was a fruit tree with half of the blue fruits. The branches and leaves were scattered, and the trunk was broken into 7 or 8 pieces. Not a single fruit could be seen on it. Other than that, there was nothing in the big pit. Rong Yuishanlin almost couldn't believe his eyes. He clearly saw that the white light was faintly wrapped around a big snow-white stone, and then it smashed into the pit. How could there be no shadow? It couldn't have been burned away like a meteorite. He clearly saw a huge piece. Ning Xuema and Xin Jiuli had been holding hands and staying in the heavenly stone. The heavenly stone was spinning at high speed when it was transmigrated. If their kung fu hadn't reached such an abnormal level, even their internal organs would have been flung out. Just as they were feeling dizzy, the stone finally stopped. After that, Ning Xuema was dumbstruck as she saw a pile of sparkling blue fruits fall from above her head, almost hitting her feet. I didn't expect this backward continent to have such a master. I almost fell into his trap. The crystal column in the heavenly stone began to flash. Fortunately, I was able to drill into the ground in time to avoid a disaster. But I have exhausted my energy at this moment, and I can't move to another place. You two use these fruits to restore your strength. Although I haven't seen these fruits before, I feel that they are rich in spiritual energy. They will be helpful to your cultivation. Ning Xuema, Shinjuli picked up a fruit and looked at it. He spat out 3 words, Carefree Island. Ning Xuema suddenly realized, Rong Yuishanlin's territory. Shinjuli looked at the fruits on the ground. There were over 100 fruits, and although they were different sizes, for better or worse, they were all ripened. He lifted his sleeve and placed the fruits into his storage space. Then he took out 2 of the largest and brightest fruits and washed them with clean water before handing them to Ning Xuema. These are blue crystal fruits. They are delicious and full of spiritual energy. In the Tianxi continent, only Carefree Island has one of these. Rongyue Tianlan regards them as more important than his own life. Normally he only uses these fruits to make wine. Every time they ripen he would give me 2 as a show of respect. Every time I pick one more he would feel incomparably pained. Ning Xuema took them and tasted them. The taste was indeed unprecedentedly sweet and delicious, and she felt refreshed as soon as she took a bite. The heavenly stone weakly sent out a line of words, "There is only one?" Yes, there is only one. Rong Yuishenlin spent a great deal of effort to cultivate it. Shinjuli knew the inside story. The heavenly stone sent out another line of words, but this time it was even weaker. But that one has already been smashed into 7 or 8 pieces. Chapter 2362. Shinjuli. He seemed to see Rong Yuishenlin's burning eyes. He patted the stone wall sympathetically. "Then you have to hide well, don't let him find you." Heavenly Lost Stone. He pulled Ning Xuema's hand again. "Let's go out." Nothing. Nothing. Rong Yuishenlin had used the earth escape technique to search the ground within a radius of 3,000 to 4,000 feet, but he still couldn't find the shadow of the strange stone. Strange, how could it not be here? Even if the stone drilled into the ground it would leave a hole, but other than the big hole he couldn't find any other hole. Could it be that his eyes were playing tricks on him? That wasn't a white stone? Instead it was a ball of lightning? Rong Yuishenlin was puzzled, but he really couldn't find it, so he had to come out of the ground again. As soon as he came out he was stunned and stared at a place. Zun. Miss Ning. Shinjuli sat leisurely in the small pavilion, as if he had never disappeared in the past 100 years. He tapped the table with his fingers and looked at Rong Yuishenlin, who had just come out like a groundhog. "Rong Yuishenlin, what are you looking for?" Ning Xuema sat beside Shinjuli and looked at Rong Yuishenlin with sympathy. Island Master Rongyue looks a little embarrassed. Rong Yuishenlin, who had always been free and easy and valued his image more than his life, looked as if he had been struck by lightning at this moment. After a while he found his voice. "Zun, the stone in the white light just now was yours?" Shinjuli raised his eyebrows. "Do I look like a stone to you?" Rong Yuishenlin. He also felt that his question was a little messy. Although the Zun liked to wear white, his image was still worlds apart from that of a stone. His gaze turned to Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema was wearing a red dress, and her smile was as bright as fire. "Island Master Rongyue doesn't think that I look like a stone, right?" "Of course not." Thus no one brought up the topic of the stone again. Rong Yuishenlin was still very happy to see the Zun and Ning Xuema. He threw aside the pain of having his precious tree smashed to the side. He flicked the dirt off his body, tidied his clothes, and opened his folding fan with a swoosh. With a suave and elegant smile, he said, "Zun, Miss Ning's presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Let's have a toast." The wine was naturally the wine brewed from the blue crystal fruit. Just as Shinjuli had said, it was the best wine. It made people want to drink a second mouthful. Naturally, the dishes were also well prepared. It was extraordinarily sumptuous. The chef that Rongyu raised on Tianlan Island was said to be the imperial chef of the imperial palace in the human world. The food that he made was extremely exquisite. "Ancestor, Miss Ning, where have you been for the past 100 years? It took me a long time to find it." Rong Yuishenlin was puzzled to death. In the past 100 years he had searched high and low for them, but he couldn't find any trace of them. Now these two people seemed to have popped out from the ground. "Rong Yuishenlin, she's my wife now." Shinjuli took a sip of wine and then threw out a bomb. The wine cup in Rong Yuishenlin's hand shook and some wine spilled out. His gaze fell on Ning Xuema and he blurted out, "You're already married? Then why haven't I seen the heavenly thunder of the God Empress?" Shinjuli sighed slightly. "It's a long story." He and Rong Yuishenlin were friends who had gone through life and death together. Naturally, he didn't want to hide anything from him, so he briefly told him about his trip to the God-Demon continent. Chapter 2363. He only said that Ning Xuema was reborn in the Divine Demon continent and he finally found her there. After going through some hardships, they finally resolved the knot in their hearts and became husband and wife. Rongyue Tianlan knew that the ancestor always spoke concisely. Although this extremely brief experience was downplayed by him, there must have been countless bloody storms in it. It might even be more exciting than the storybooks he read. Fortunately, although these two went through hardships, they were still together. They were so loving, so everything was enough. Looking at their current level of affection, even a standard eligible bachelor like him could not help but feel envious. Shinjuli and Rongyue Tianlan had not seen each other for 100 years. When old friends met, they naturally had a lot to talk about. 1,000 cups were not enough to drink with a bosom friend, let alone a friend who had been separated for 100 years. According to Rongyue Tianlan, they must drink to their heart's content and not return until they were drunk. The banquet between the three of them was naturally a joyous one. During this banquet, Ning Xuema also learned from Rongyue Tianlan about the changes in the Tianxi continent in the past 100 years. For example, Chongkong country had a new monarch. Ji Yunhao had passed away and his son had succeeded the throne. For example, the former crown prince Shiju was now the famous wisdom king. He was the kind of person who could make the earth tremble with a stomp of his feet. Princess Mingwan, who used to be in power in the wisdom king manner, left home after her brother took over the throne. Some people said that she had already cultivated to become a deity, while others said that she lived in seclusion. Anyway, no one had ever seen her again. And the one that Rongyue Tianlan enjoyed talking about the most was the former crown prince of Chongkong country, Ji Yunhuang. It was said that this martial arts genius had been crazily looking for the whereabouts of a woman in the 6 realms. His whereabouts were uncertain. Back then, Ji Yunhao was always afraid that this brother would suddenly wake up and come to fight with him for the throne, so he sent many assassins to assassinate him, but they were all killed by him. Because he was always a little crazy, everyone thought that this genius was crippled. Who would have thought that after being crazy for more than 10 years, he would suddenly wake up and return to Buddha Lotus Mountain to cultivate? In a short 30 years he actually broke through to the heaven realm and became an immortal. He became the guardian elder of Buddha Lotus Mountain and his status was second only to Yelu Jingyan. In the entire Tianxi continent he was a well-known figure. However, after he succeeded in his cultivation, he didn't stay at Buddha Lotus Mountain often. Every year he would spend most of his time traveling outside. Ning Xuema and Xin Jiuli looked at each other. According to the heavenly Tao stone, the first pair they had to help was the marriage of Immortal Ji. Ning Xuema was wondering who this Immortal Ji was. She didn't expect to hear this news from Rongyue Tianlan. Looks like this Immortal Ji was referring to Ji Yunhuang. However, Tian Xueqing was already dead, and Ji Yunhuang had been crazy for her for more than 10 years. Who could his marriage be now? Thinking about Ji Yunhuang who had helped her before, Ning Xuema's heart darkened. She secretly decided to help him this time and help him find his true love. Is Ji Yunhuang in Buddha Lotus Mountain now? Rongyue Tianlan shook her head slightly. Probably not. Usually he would be wandering around the 6 realms during this season. Wandering around the 6 realms. That's a really wide range. Ning Xuema looked at Xinjiuli. Great God, can you guess where Ji Yunhuang is now? Xinjiuli raised his hand and poured a cup of tea for her. He said firmly, there's no need to guess. Let's go back to Buddha Lotus Mountain. He will definitely come to find us. Chapter 2364. Xueqing is already dead. A new person can be appointed. Be happy for 100 years and have many children and grandchildren. That green robe was like a flower in the dark, blooming and withering in an instant. Xueqing. Ji Yunhuang cried out in pain, but he could only watch as she fell and was swallowed by the darkness, never to be seen again. His heart tightened and every breath he took was filled with immense pain. Where is she? Where is she? He stood in the huge pit. His hands were covered with wounds and blood flowed all over the ground, but he did not feel anything. He only stared blankly at the bottom of the pit. His expression was like that of a lost child. Despair, complete and utter despair. He did not know how long he had been standing there, but he did not use any protective barrier. He was exposed to the violent wind and snow, receiving the slashes of the wind and snow as if he was trying to atone for his sins. It was as if as long as he stood there for a while, she would forgive him and appear. Xueqing. He shouted and opened his eyes. The night was silent and he did not sleep for a long night. He knew that he was dreaming again. He dreamed of the moment when Xueqing died. He dreamed of the scene that caused him to feel pain in his bones. Over and over again he had already dreamed of this scene countless times. Every time it was this kind of bone-piercing pain. It was said that the 18th layer of the underworld was where the most heinous criminals were locked up. However, the underworld only applied one type of punishment to these people. They were made to experience the most painful period of their lives every day. Day after day, year after year, the pain was like an endless circle. There was no beginning, no end. There was only a lost soul, and they were tortured by the memories of being dismembered over and over again. Was he now imprisoned in the 18th layer of hell? This was good too. At least he could see her once every day. No matter how much pain that scene made him go crazy, he was willing to endure it. At least he could see her. Compared to not being able to find her in the real world, he would rather live in hell. His entire body was cold and his heart was numb from the pain. He did not know when, but the wind had weakened by a lot. A few snowflakes blew in front of him, but Ji Yunhuang was mesmerized by these snowflakes. When he opened his eyes again, his heart began to beat wildly. This was a scene that he had never encountered in his countless dreams. The wind and snow had stopped, and that person was wearing a sky-blue robe. She stood there quietly, looking at him without any sadness or joy. Xueqing? He wanted to pounce on her and hug her, but his feet seemed to be nailed to the ground. After waiting for so long, hundreds of years flashed by him, leaving only that beautiful face deeply imprinted in his mind. Just like the person in front of him. He strenuously took a step forward as his hoarse voice sounded like a dried-up stream. Xueqing, so you're not dead. That's great, you're not dead. His body trembled violently as if he could not withstand the huge emotional fluctuations. It was as if he would kneel on the ground in the next second. Tian Xueqing smiled at him. You're wrong. I'm already dead. The one standing in front of you is already a dead man. She tilted her head slightly, looking innocent and seductive. Are you afraid? Ji Yunhuang stopped in his tracks and closed his eyes. He walked in front of her and hugged her tightly. His arms tightened as he said in a low voice, I was afraid. I was so afraid that you would never come back. Xueqing, don't leave me again, all right? His embrace was like an iron hoop that encircled her tightly. Chapter 2365. His embrace was like an iron hoop tightly encircling her, but Tian Xueqing did not seem to feel any pain as she continued to speak. Yunhuang, I'm already dead. If you want me to come back to life, you have to use your life in exchange. Are you willing? Her voice was still light, but there was a trace of evil in it. Her embrace was too real, too warm. Her cold fragrance lingered around him like a gentle hand, soothing all the uneasiness in his heart. Hugging her, it was as if he was hugging his entire world. The empty hole in his heart was finally blocked, and he felt extremely warm. Even if he knew that she was his inner demon, he could not bear to push her away. Ji Yunhuang closed his eyes, still hugging her tightly, not willing to let go. His voice had a trace of relief. You gave me an illusion and I'm very happy. My life, if you want it, you can take it. Tian Xueqing smiled faintly, and in that instant her appearance suddenly changed. An ice blade condensed in her hand, and she ruthlessly stabbed it towards Ji Yunhuang. Her voice was still as gentle as before, full of affection. Then I'll take it away. He felt a pain between his eyebrows as if he was being pricked by a needle. At the same time, a cool female voice rang out, like a gurgling spring water flowing beside his ear. Quickly wake up. Quickly wake up. The scene in front of him scattered like shooting stars, returning to darkness. All of a sudden he felt a small hand reaching for his pulse. Suddenly startled, he opened his eyes and saw a 12 to 13-year-old girl squatting beside him. Seeing that he had woken up, she let out a long sigh of relief. You're finally awake. I can even pull you back from chi deviation. My medical skills must have improved again. She seemed to be smiling happily, but Ji Yunhuang could not smile at all. There seemed to be a problem with his eyesight. He could only vaguely see that the girl was wearing a green dress, and her hair was simply draped behind her back. He could not see her face clearly, as if there was a thin layer of fog separating them. But based on his intuition, this was a delicate and beautiful girl. The girl waved her hand in front of his face. What's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Ji Yunhuang frowned and said indifferently, I'm fine, thank you for saving me. I will definitely repay you for saving my life in the future. The young girl tilted her head but did not stop him. She watched as he stood up and slowly walked forward. With a flick of her hand, a silver needle pierced towards Ji Yunhuang. Ji Yunhuang was caught off guard and actually fell into her trap. His legs went numb and he could no longer walk. He softly fell to the ground. At the same time, his entire body stiffened and he was unable to move. Ji Yunhuang's voice was cold as he asked, Miss, do you have any other advice? The young girl ran in front of him and carefully examined his injuries. She then looked at his eyelids and calmly said, Your chi went into a fork and collided with your eyes. Your eyes need to be treated, otherwise they will be crippled. I only hastily bandaged the penetrating wound on your abdomen. If you go out like this, you won't live for more than 3 days. Alright, I'm done. Are you sure you want to leave now? Ji Yunhuang was silent for a moment before he finally said, Then I'll have to trouble you, Mississippi. What he wanted to do was not in a hurry. For the past 100 years he had been searching for Tian Xueqing. He did not know if she was still alive, but he had to be alive. He did not want to be reincarnated again and forget about her. So after searching for more than 10 years without any results, he suddenly realized that there were specks of white in his black hair. For a moment he felt as if he was struck by lightning. He still had not found her, so how could he grow old? Chapter 2366. Thus, he returned to Buddha Lotus Mountain and began to cultivate like a madman. His aptitude was originally very high, and when he cultivated without any distractions, he actually broke through several levels and entered the first level of the heaven realm in 20 years. According to the current saying, he had become an immortal and attained the Tao. The vicissitudes of life did not change his appearance, but changed his state of mind. He was more open to everything in this world. Imperial power and fame were like dung to him, but he could not let go of the obsession in his heart. He did not believe that Tian Xueqing's soul had really dissipated, so he mainly cultivated the soul summoning technique. However, even though he had cultivated this technique to the peak, he still could not summon even half of her soul. It was said that a soul that died unjustly would not be reincarnated. Tian Xueqing must have died unwillingly, and she must have hated him. Her soul should be floating in this world, but he did not know why he could not summon her. Unknowingly, this obsession had become his inner demon, entangling him every day. The news of the ancestors' return was like a spring breeze blowing across the entire Tianxi continent, and everyone in the world was excited. Ever since the disappearance of the ancestor, the Tianxi continent was somewhat chaotic. Without his iron fist to keep the balance, several countries had gone to war. Although it was not to the extent of causing a world war, it was indeed difficult for the people to make a living these years. When the ancestor returned, Chongkong country and Feishing country were at loggerheads, and war was on the verge of breaking out. When the ancestor returned, he did not even make an official appearance. He only asked Yelu Jing and to pass a message to the monarchs of the two countries, and the war was put to an end. The ancestor was like a savior in the Tianxi continent, and his return made many people's blood boil. The monarchs of various countries, sect leaders, and families all rushed to Buddha Lotus Mountain to pay their respects to the ancestor. Many people who were not qualified to enter the mountain also wandered around Buddha Lotus Mountain after hearing the news of the ancestor's return. They kowtowed to Buddha Lotus Mountain sincerely and cried tears of joy. The people of various countries were celebrating, and it was even more lively than the New Year. Especially when they heard that the ancestor had gotten married, and that the empress was the former trash Ning Xuema, it was even more lively. Even the monarchs of various countries issued a decree at the same time. When the venerable sovereign returned, the whole country celebrated and pardoned the world. This kind of jubilation naturally alarmed Ji Yunhuang, who was wandering somewhere. He hurriedly rushed back to Buddha Lotus Mountain to pay his respects to his grandmaster and saw Ning Xuema and the ancestor who he had not seen for a long time. Ji Yunhuang was, after all, the second in command of the Buddha Lotus Mountain. Naturally, he knew about Ning Xuema's case. He also knew that her soul had been scattered during the lightning tribulation. He didn't expect that not only would she be able to come back unscathed, her cultivation level had already surpassed the heaven realm. He didn't need to fight with her to know that her current cultivation level was unfathomable. While he was happy for her, he also felt a renewed sense of hope. Ning Xuema was able to return even after her soul was scattered. Would Tian Xueqing be able to return as well? Would he be able to see her again? He immediately knelt down and begged the ancestor to show him the right path. The ancestor looked at him for a long time and calculated for a moment. Then he told him that the inner core of the cloud-swallowing beast in the northern underworld mist sea and the ghost grass could be used to make the soul-luring incense. The soul-luring incense's ability to attract souls was very strong, and it might be able to bring about a miracle for him. Ji Yunhuang felt as if he had found a treasure. He had already found the ghost grass and was only missing the inner core of the cloud-swallowing beast. Originally, he was 90% sure that he would be able to obtain the inner core of the cloud-swallowing beast, but he never expected that he would suffer from chi deviation at that time and almost get swallowed by the cloud-swallowing beast. Fortunately, he was saved by the girl in front of him. Chapter 2367. He was thinking about the cloud-swallowing beast's inner core and did not want to stay here any longer. After he woke up, he wanted to leave. The young girl waved her hand. "Since I saved you, I will definitely save you thoroughly." Master said, "If you want to save someone, you should save them all the way." Therefore, even if he had rejected her, she would have forced him to stay and only let him go when he recovered. Ji Yunhuang looked at the young girl in front of him and was momentarily absent-minded. Although he could not see clearly, he could see that the young girl was wearing a green gown. Looking at her, he seemed to see the figure that he yearned for day and night. He was willing to pay any price in exchange for her return. But, why hasn't she returned? He had already given up everything, so why hasn't she returned? Xueqing Ji Yunhuang's eyes seemed to be filled with a myriad of changes. Although he still had that carefree look on his face, the intense emotions in his eyes were like a raging inferno under a layer of ice, burning fiercely. The young girl raised her eyebrows and her voice was somewhat unhappy. Why do you keep looking at me? Ji Yunhuang regained his senses and his emotions gradually calmed down. There were many young girls in green gowns in this world, but there was only one Tian Xueqing. He should not have stared at a 13 or 14-year-old girl to search for her shadow. He casually changed the topic. You like green? The young girl nodded and removed the silver needles that were sealing his acupuncture points. She faintly said, it's all right. Ji Yunhuang suddenly had the intention to ask, why? Usually he was not willing to talk nonsense with others, but for some reason he started to talk more today. The young girl pulled him up and casually replied, there's no why. If you like it, you like it. Ji Yunhuang choked and did not say anything else. The young girl led Ji Yunhuang forward. Along the way they passed through flowers and willows, bypassing fake mountains and flowing rivers. Along the way there were people who constantly greeted the young girl. The young girl stopped and nodded her head in acknowledgement until a handsome young man casually waved a fan and walked in front of the young girl. Ching, you brought back another injured person. The young girl stopped and sized up the person. Then she faintly smiled and said, Herr Yun, I see that you have recovered well. You can go down the mountain now. Yun Shizhi sighed when he heard what was said. He looked as if he was about to cry. After not seeing each other for so many days, the first thing Ching said was to chase me away. I'm so sad. Ching couldn't help but laugh. She waved her hand and said, don't mess around. I don't have time to deal with you right now. Yun Shizhi glanced at her resentfully. Ching has a new patient and no longer pays attention to the old patient. So I forget it. Then this Shizhi will go down the mountain. Don't worry, after a few days this Shizhi will definitely return. Ever since Ching had saved him once a year ago, he had fallen in love with Ching at first sight. He ran up Qingji Mountain time and time again, but if it wasn't for a headache or heartache, it was all minor ailments. It wasn't until half a year ago when he was almost assassinated and had a hole in his stomach that he came in lying down. As soon as he saw Ching's face, he showed her the hole in his stomach as if he was presenting a treasure, proving that he was really injured this time. Ching used 3 months to heal him, but he kept saying that it would take 100 days to heal his bones and tendons. Moreover, not only did he have his bones and tendons injured, his stomach was also pierced by a sword. No matter what, he would need at least 200 days to heal. He refused to leave no matter what, and Ching couldn't do anything about it. Ching's master was even more benevolent and had no reason to chase him away. Chapter 2368. Thus, Yun Shizhi had stayed there until now and had to leave today because of his family's misfortune. Yun Shizhi waved his fan as he left. His annoying words could be heard in the wind. Ching, wait for me to come back. Don't be too gentle to the new patient, just torture him to death. You only need to be gentle to me. His figure suddenly staggered and sat on the ground, unable to get up for a long time. He looked around but could only see Ching and Ji Yunhuang's figures in the distance. He rubbed his legs and scolded, who is it? Who dares to plot against this young master? Yi, how did you protect this young master? A sentence faintly floated from the tree. Master? There was a rock under your feet. This subordinate was about to remind you, but you... Yun Shizhi stood up and angrily kicked the rock away, limping away. Qing walked in front, so she did not notice Ji Yunhuang's slightly raised lips. Usually Ji Yunhuang did not have the mind to care about these people, but today he felt that Yun Shizhi was especially repulsive, so he took action to teach him a lesson. His mental power was profound, so Yun Shizhi and that shadow guard naturally could not tell that he was the one who did it. Ji Yunhuang stared at the slender figure in front of him, his mind still reverberating with Yun Shizhi's words Ching. In this world there were many girls with the word Ching in their names. Ji Yunhuang had walked the Tianxi continent for many years and had heard countless of Chingyas and Chingyas. But no matter how many times he had heard it, when he heard this taboo word again, his heart would fiercely tighten. Could it be? Could it be her? Every time he would subconsciously chase after her with this glimmer of hope, but without exception he would fail. Ji Yunhuang pretended to ask casually, "May I ask for Mrs. Name?" Qing Qing's footsteps paused for a moment before she continued walking forward. "We met by chance. If you don't ask me, I won't ask you. You can just call me Miss Qing." Ji Yunhuang did not have to ask for her name, so after hearing this he did not say anything else. It was just that her name had the word Qing in it. She was not her. Qing led him through a magnificent corridor and arrived at a room. Although Ji Yunhuang couldn't see clearly, he felt that this was a very elegant and simple room. There was a bouquet of unknown flowers in the vase, emitting a faint fragrance. The young girl turned around to face Ji Yunhuang and said, "This is the meditation garden. From now on you will recuperate here." She briefly introduced the surrounding environment, then led him to the bedside and lightly said, "Take off your shirt." Ji Yunhuang stared blankly for a moment and sat there without moving. The young girl raised her eyebrows impatiently and said in a cool voice, "What? You're a man. Are you afraid that I'll take advantage of you?" "That's right, let me say this first. I'm just treating your injuries. Don't say anything about me taking responsibility for you. Alright, take off your clothes. Do you want me to take them off for you or do you want to take them off yourself?" One had to say that although Qing was cold, she was really strong and narcissistic. This couldn't be blamed on her. She was beautiful and had good medical skills. She was famous and all the famous young masters liked her. Because Qing had treated their illnesses, there were many people who wanted her to take responsibility for them. There were also many people who said that when Qing grew up, they would marry her. All of these made Qing extremely annoyed, so every time she treated a patient, she would say these things as a routine. Chapter 2369. Ji Yunhuang did not know what to think for a moment. He slowly took off his shirt, revealing his jade-white chest. On his abdomen, there was a gauze that Qing had hastily wrapped around his abdomen. Blood was faintly seeping out from the gauze. The red blood contrasted against his jade-like skin. Amidst his healthy body, there was a cruel and enchanting aura. Qing looked at his smooth upper body. Her eyes were somewhat uneasy as she averted her gaze. She did not expect that the patient she had casually picked up would have such a good figure. It made her, who had seen countless naked bodies because of her medical practice, unable to take her eyes off him. Ji Yunhuang could not see Qing's expression clearly. He only saw her standing beside the bed without saying anything. He faintly frowned. He was born handsome. These years there were many women who stared at him more than the stars in the sky. Although he usually did not show it, he was somewhat annoyed. He thought that this girl was special, but he did not expect. His voice was slightly cold. "Miss Qing, is there something wrong?" Qing glanced at him. Her voice was indifferent and cold. "Your figure is very good." Ji Yunhuang was speechless. He never thought that she would say such words in front of him. For a moment he did not know how to respond. Qing's voice sounded like she was praising a work of art. "The texture of your skin is distinct. You are thin but not bony. Your proportions are balanced and there is not a trace of excess fat. If you did not suffer such a serious injury, your skin color would be more moist." Ji Yunhuang was speechless. He seriously suspected that she was looking at him as if she was looking at a human specimen. It made him have an impulse to immediately cover his clothes. "Lie down." Qing threw out the two words again. These two words made it difficult for people not to misunderstand. Ji Yunhuang was on guard. "What are you doing?" "I am a doctor. What can I do?" Qing was somewhat impatient. She twirled a silver needle in her hand. "Don't you want to treat your injuries?" Alright, it was him who misunderstood. Ji Yunhuang did not know what expression to make. The injury on his body was indeed serious. Just a slight movement caused him to break out in cold sweat. He slowly lay down. "Thank you for your trouble." Qing did not comment. She raised her hand and untied the gauze. Her actions could not be considered gentle. She did not know why, but when she saw his face, she felt an inexplicable anger rising in her heart. As soon as the bandage was removed, blood flowed out, making the wound even more hideous. The cloud-swallowing beast did not have any other advantages, but the wounds it created were not easy to heal. When he was injured, he had treated it himself, and Qing had also helped him treat it once. Unexpectedly, the wound still did not heal. Seeing the blood flowing out once again, Ji Yunhuang frowned slightly. His gaze once again turned to Qing. "Miss Qing, do you know any suturing techniques?" Qing raised her eyebrows and looked at him. What suturing technique? Originally there was no suture technique in this era. No matter how serious the injury was, it was wrapped in gauze. After Ning Xuema came, this suture technique was passed down in Buddha Lotus Mountain. Ji Yunhuang was one of them. Everything he saw was a blur, so he naturally could not suture it himself. He could only explain the main points of suturing. Qing was very smart. She was very persistent in anything related to medicine and listened very seriously. After listening to Ji Yunhuang's explanation, she glanced at Ji Yunhuang. I didn't expect your medical skills to be so good. Ji Yunhuang slightly lowered his eyes and did not reply. That year, Tian Xueqing was seriously injured and was dragged underground by the monster. That scene became his eternal nightmare. Tian Xueqing's blood-covered appearance flashed in front of his eyes from time to time. Chapter 2370. The image of Tian Xueqing covered in blood flashed in front of his eyes from time to time. He thought that if he could save her, the first thing he would do was to treat her injuries with his own hands. Therefore he put in a lot of hard work and learned medical skills. His ability to deal with external injuries was superb. Unfortunately he only had medical skills, but he did not have the person he wanted to treat. His heart was touched and the familiar suffocating pain came. He closed his eyes slightly. Xueqing, even if I have to risk my life, I will find a way to bring you back. He still wanted to challenge the cloud-swallowing beast. Qing naturally did not know that his heart was filled with so many emotions. She was studying the special silver needle and fish catgut thread that Ji Yunhuang took out. After studying for a while, she tested it on a piece of cowhide nearby. After confirming that the technique was correct, she walked in front of Ji Yunhuang. Just as she was about to insert the needle, she suddenly stopped and looked at Ji Yunhuang with a smile. Are you afraid of pain? Ji Yunhuang shook his head slightly. I'm not afraid. Miss, please feel free to do it. He had experienced the most painful injuries before, so why would he care about the pain of suturing? Qing looked at him for a moment and pursed her lips. Then I'll start now. Bear with it. She lowered her head and stitched him up. Such a forceful suturing was naturally very painful, but Ji Yunhuang's face was still as calm as before. He did not even frown. Qing looked at him and was somewhat impressed. She could not tell that such a gentle and refined person was actually a tough guy. She glanced at his forehead and saw faint cold sweat. Obviously, no matter how tough his personality was, he still had a sense of pain. Stay here and don't move. Wait for me. Qing seemed to have finally made up her mind. She took out a small porcelain bottle from her sleeve and pointed the mouth of the bottle at Ji Yunhuang. The fragrance lingered in the air. Ji Yunhuang's wound was originally very painful, but after inhaling the fragrance he gradually could not feel the pain. Even his 5 senses were slowly weakening. He was shocked and subconsciously held his breath. As a superior he was born with a noble status, but he also had a strong sense of vigilance that matched it. Qing looked at him and pursed her lips. Are you afraid that I will poison you? If I want to kill you, 1 needle is enough, or I can just leave you alone. This little girl's mouth was really poisonous. However, what she said was the truth. Ji Yunhuang relaxed and asked, What is this fragrance? Qing glanced at him. This is the fragrance of flowers. It can reduce the pain of wounds and weaken the 5 senses for a short period of time. My master left this to me. There's only half a bottle in total. Since you taught me the art of suturing, I'm giving it to you. Don't waste it. I'm going to operate on you now. You can't move an inch. Can you do it? Although she was young, she had a strong aura. Ji Yunhuang glanced at her, then closed his eyes and steadied his breathing. However, his heart was not as calm as his appearance. At that moment he suddenly recalled a warm spring afternoon with a gentle breeze. When he was seriously injured and lying in bed, Tian Xueqing was treating his wounds while explaining to him the various kinds of ointments. Occasionally her jet black hair would fall on his chest. The wind would caress her hair, bringing about a slight itch. That itch went all the way to the bottom of his heart. It was like a little claw, gently scratching his heart. Perhaps he had already been tempted at that time, but at that time he refused to listen to his heart and subconsciously avoided this feeling. Chapter 2371. But at that time he refused to listen to his heart and subconsciously avoided this feeling. The words he said were as cold as ice. You spent so much effort to save me. Are you afraid that if I die, you won't be able to be the crown princess? At that time he could clearly feel Tian Xueqing's body trembling. There was pain, sorrow and disbelief in her eyes. In the end she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her eyes were cold and calm. She smiled faintly. Her voice was calm, but it still trembled slightly. That's right. If you die, how can I be the crown princess? So, Your Highness, please let it go. Xueqing will do her best to heal you, even if it's for the position of crown princess. Memories were like knives that cut into his heart. Qing felt that she was usually cold enough, but she did not expect that the patient she randomly picked up was even colder than her. Ji Yunhuang lay there motionlessly while Qing swiftly and gracefully treated his wounds. The two of them cooperated very well. After 2 hours, Qing finished treating his wound. Then, she hurriedly put away the small porcelain bottle and carefully closed the lid with a pained expression. His 5 senses slowly returned to Ji Yunhuang's body. At the same time, his abdomen felt numb and itchy as if countless ants were biting his wound. He closed his eyes and didn't say a word, enduring it out of habit. Qing looked at him again and said, "Rest well today. Don't get out of bed and don't eat." After telling him a lot of things, she finally said, "You're applying E ointment on your abdomen. You'll feel numb and itchy. Although the process is a bit painful, it's the fastest way to recover. But if you can't take it anymore, you can ring the bell beside the bed and I'll change the medicine for you." "It's fine, there's no need to change," Ji Yunhuang replied with a few words. He only wanted to get better quickly so that he could obtain the cloud-swallowing beast's inner core as soon as possible. He did not care about anything else. Qing nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. She quickly packed up the equipment. Although she had a cold and domineering personality, she was surprisingly attentive and patient. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become a famous genius doctor. Ji Yunhuang opened his eyes, but all he could see was a blurry silhouette. He said in a low voice, "Many thanks. If Miss needs anything in the future, this Yun will definitely do his best to help." Although he didn't have any feelings for this girl, but if she was in trouble in the future, he would help her no matter what. There was no other reason than to repay her for saving his life. Qing glanced at him again. "You're welcome. I'm here to collect medical fees." In other words, they were each taking what they needed. Ji Yunhuang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Right now, he was most afraid of owing someone a favor. If he could repay it with money, that would be the best. He didn't ask how much the consultation fee was. With his current strength, no matter how much money it was, he could afford it. However, this girl had a straightforward and bright personality, which was different from other girls. So he smiled and said, "No matter what, I still have to thank you for your timely help. If it wasn't for her, he might have been eaten by the wild beasts." Qing nodded slightly. She seemed to feel that her attitude was a little cold, so she added, "I'll treat your eyes with acupuncture tomorrow." Then she turned and left. Ji Yunhuang closed his eyes as he thought to himself, "This lady has excellent medical skills." Tian Xueqing's figure flashed in his mind. Tian Xueqing used to be a medicine man, and her medical skills were also quite good. Chapter 2372. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, Ji Yunhuang's eyesight improved day by day. Spirals of green smoke rose from the incense burner, bringing with it a cool fragrance that filled the entire room. Qing sat by the bed and watched as the incense burned shorter and shorter until it finally turned into ashes. She stretched out her hand and slowly pulled out the silver needles from Ji Yunhuang's acupuncture points. Then, she let out a long breath and lifted her hand to remove the cloth covering his eyes. "All right, you can open your eyes and see if there is any discomfort." Although her voice was light, it carried a trace of pride. Although she was only 14 years old, as long as she acted, there was no injury that she could not treat. Ji Yunhuang heard her and slowly opened his eyes. At first, his vision was a little hazy as if there was a layer of fog, but it gradually became clearer and clearer. He finally saw the girl in front of him clearly. She looked to be around 13 or 14 years old. There was still some baby fat on her face, making her look delicate and cute. Her green dress was like the misty rain in Jiangnan. It was light and had an indescribable charm. Her ink-black hair was like a waterfall that cascaded down her back. Her skin was tender and white as if it could be broken by the wind. The most wonderful thing about her was her pair of bright eyes. It was as if there was a river of stars hidden within them. Her temperament was cold, but there was a trace of purity in her bones. Ji Yunhuang's face instantly turned white. His hands could not help but tremble as he stared at the girl in front of him. At that moment, his heart felt as if it had suddenly fallen from the sky. All the blood in his body flowed backwards. His usually calm and rational mind was now blank. There was only one thought in his mind. Was it her? Was it her? Was it her? Ah Ching's appearance was simply a miniature version of Tian Xueqing. Even her temperament was almost the same. Ah Ching looked at his stunned expression and thought that he had not recovered yet. She slightly frowned and waved her small white hand in front of his face. What happened to you? Are you still unable to see clearly? Before she could finish her sentence, she was suddenly pulled. She was caught off guard and fell onto Ji Yunhuang's body. She was brought into a cold and delicate embrace. Ah Ching was instantly stunned. She had never been in such close contact with anyone before. None of the patients before her had dared to be so disrespectful to her. The man's cold breath mixed with the fragrance of medicine assaulted her face, almost drowning her in an instant. Ji Yunhuang tightened his embrace and felt the familiar scent in his embrace. He was so excited that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. They were too alike. Their auras were too similar. Why didn't he feel it before? Ah Ching was most likely Tian Xueqing. If he wanted to be sure, he would have to check Ah Ching's soul. Probing the soul required intimate contact with the person being probed, so Ji Yunhuang subconsciously pulled her into his embrace. Only when she was in his embrace did he realize an important problem. His psychokinesis had only recovered 30 to 40%, so he couldn't detect her soul at all. Ji Yunhuang hugged the person in his arms, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Ah Ching finally realized that she was being molested. Her face instantly flushed red with anger. She fiercely struggled out of Ji Yunhuang's embrace and kicked him off the bed. Ji Yunhuang had never thought that he would be kicked off the bed. He could not help but stare blankly for a moment. Once again his wound was agitated. He let out a light groan and his face turned even paler. Ah Ching's eyes were as cold as the stars. At this moment, her eyes were burning with rage. I was kind enough to save you, but you actually dared to molest me. Do you believe that I can easily cripple you? Chapter 2373. Ah Ching took out a silver needle from nowhere. That silver needle was simple and did not have any decorations. Under the light, it shone with a cold luster, but the tip of the needle had a dense emerald green color. With one look, one could tell that it was poisoned. She looked at Ji Yunhuang, who was kicked off the bed by her, with caution. If he dared to take advantage of her again, she would poison him to death. Ji Yunhuang slowly sat up from the ground. This movement made him feel that his wound had split open again and fresh blood was seeping out. Borrowing this pain, he slowly regained his rationality. She was still so young. If she was really Tian Xueqing, then she was also her reincarnation. He was indeed too excited. Even if the current Ah Ching was really Tian Xueqing, they should take things one step at a time. He was so rash that he was afraid that he would scare her. It would not be good to leave the impression of a lecher on the first time they met. His eyes were deep, like a deep pool that was tightly locked onto her. There seemed to be countless emotions rolling in his eyes, causing Ah Ching to have the illusion that she was about to be pulled into a deep pool and drowned. Her heart skipped a beat and she retreated 2 steps with caution. This person's gaze was too oppressive. It made her have the urge to turn around and run away. However, this was her territory, so why should she run away? If he dared to take advantage of her again, she would directly cripple him. Ah Ching's eyes flashed with killing intent as she held the silver needle even tighter. Ji Yunhuang finally calmed down and quickly sorted out his complicated thoughts. He raised his eyes and looked at Ah Ching. Naturally, he saw that she was filled with hostility and alertness. His heart was stifled as he took a light breath. I'm sorry, Miss Ah Ching. The moment I saw you, I thought that I saw my long-awaited wife. You are very similar to her. It's as if you were carved out from the same mold. Speaking until here, his heart ached and he closed his eyes slightly. The person he once loved was his wife, but now they had become strangers. His voice was somewhat hoarse and his whole body seemed to be filled with grief. However, he was an extremely handsome man. At this moment he was simply sitting there, but it was as if he was a desolate ink painting, causing people's hearts to be filled with sorrow. Ah Ching was full of anger, but she couldn't vent it when she saw him like this. She was still young after all, and it wasn't easy for her to deal with this kind of situation. She paused for a moment before saying with a straight face, I'm very sorry that your wife is no longer around, but no matter how much I look like her, I'm not her. If there's a next time. She waved the poison needle in her hand. Ji Yunhuang looked at her with a sincere gaze. This time it's my fault. I've offended Mississippi. I'll accept punishment. His voice paused for a moment before he suddenly changed the topic. My wife is still alive, but Before Qing could figure out how to punish him, she was intrigued by his hesitant words. But what? She had been waiting for him to continue, but all she saw was Ji Yunhuang sitting there with his eyes slightly closed, not saying a word. Ji Yunhuang closed his eyes, and images kept appearing in front of his eyes. When he finally pulled himself out of his memories, he slowly opened his eyes. The sorrow in his black eyes hadn't completely faded away, and it turned into a little surprise. He had been in a daze for so long, but Qing was still standing there. Her clear eyes were filled with doubt. Seeing that he finally returned to his senses, she asked, "But what? Why did this person only say half of what he wanted to say, stuttering?" Ji Yunhuang looked at her curious expression and felt that it was a little funny. Chapter 2374. Ji Yunhuang looked at her curious expression and felt slightly amused. After all, she was still a child. Ji Yunhuang did not let her wait for too long. He looked at the scenery outside the window and slowly said, "It's just that she went missing. Maybe she doesn't remember me anymore." His tone was very light, but Qing could hear the loneliness behind his indifference. Qing simply found a chair and sat down. She looked at him curiously and asked, "Missing? How did she go missing?" Ji Yunhuang looked at her and did not speak for a long time. Just when Qing thought that she would not get an answer, Ji Yunhuang's slightly hoarse voice sounded. "I let her down." Qing waited for a long time and only heard these few words. She did not know what to say. Although this man looked young, she could tell that he was sad. Since it was a sad matter, she did not want to ask any more. She made an "ah" sound and did not ask any more questions. She turned around and left, closing the door behind her. Ji Yunhuang looked at Qing's departing figure and his mind was in a mess. For the past 100 years, his mood had been as calm and hopeless as stagnant water. Today when he saw Qing, huge waves surged up and he could not calm down for a long time. Qing, is she really Tian Xueqing? From their appearance to their temperament, it was as if they were carved from the same mold. They were too alike. They were too alike. It was impossible that they were not the same person. But what if they just happened to look alike but their souls were not the same? Could it be that this encounter was just a joke played by the heavens? For a time, all kinds of emotions came one after another. This doubt was like a windmill that spun in his heart non-stop. In the end he sighed and took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and meditated. Whether Qing was Xueqing or not, he had to check her soul to confirm. The most important thing now was to restore his psychokinesis. After Qing left Jingxinyuan, her mood was slightly strange. To be precise, when she saw the unconscious patient in front of her, she felt a slight pain in her heart. It was as if something was about to surge up from the bottom of her heart. Her heart was always as calm as still water and she did not care about living. But after meeting him, her heart would ripple from time to time. Moreover, she always felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity towards him. It was a very strange feeling. Qing was sure that she had never seen him before. She didn't even know his name until now. She only knew that his surname was Yun when he woke up. Then where did this inexplicable sense of familiarity come from? Qing thought for a long time but couldn't think of a reason, so she decided not to think about it anymore. She slowly returned to her room, picked up the secret book left behind by her master, and began to concentrate on studying medicine. Qing had a very good memory. Chapter 2375. Her master was the first human she had ever met. It was a winter day when GMO accidentally passed by a forest. Suddenly he saw a large stone in the middle of the snow-white forest. On top of the jade stone sat a small child who looked like it was carved from jade. The child was swinging its small white feet while tilting its head and looking at GMO with its big clear eyes. It was as if it was looking at a rare thing. Then GMO took her back and took her as his disciple. "How about I name you Ji Xueqing?" A gentle voice sounded. She replied in a childish voice, "Master, your disciple's name is Tian Xueqing." GMO laughed. "All right, then you'll be called Tian Xueqing." GMO taught Tian Xueqing with great care and trained her into a famous genius doctor. He gave Tian Xueqing a few books that he had painstakingly worked on for many years. Then he went to travel the world and only came back once every 1 or 2 years. Counting the days, her master should be coming back soon, right? Tian Xueqing put down the book and looked out the window. When she thought about her master coming back, her eyes were filled with joy and she threw away all her unhappiness. In the sky above the clouds, Ning Xuema looked down at the valley below and sighed. "I didn't expect Tian Xueqing to have reincarnated," Great God, you ordered Ji Yunhuang to come here to give them a chance to meet, right? Shinjuli also glanced at the valley. She didn't reincarnate. She was reborn. So she's still Tian Xueqing? Great God, I remember that you calculated that she and Ji Yunhuang were not fated to die. Now that you've put them together, isn't that going against the heavens? Ning Xuema was a little worried. Shinjuli put an arm on her shoulder and said lazily, originally they were not fated to be together. However, Tian Xueqing had already died once. Ji Yunhuang was too obsessed with her, so he managed to fight for a trace of fate. Now let's see if they can grasp this bit of fate. Ning Xuema looked at him. The trace. Shinjuli twirled the jade flute in his hand and used his other hand to pull up a strand of her black hair. Then he used his fingertips to pick up another strand. And a trace. Ning Xuema naturally hoped that Ji Yunhuang and Tian Xueqing would be able to hold hands again, but she looked at Shinjuli and asked, Guru, what will happen if the matchmaking fails? Shinjuli tapped his palm with the jade flute and muttered to himself, it will probably take me a little longer to return to my youth. Ning Xuema thought for a moment and interlocked her fingers with his. She said seriously, Almighty, actually, I think that you're quite cute when you're a kid. I really like you. Don't worry, no matter what you become, I won't abandon you. Shinjuli, did this girl want to raise him as little Nianma? Ji Yunhuang had always been a light sleeper, so when there was movement at the door, he had already woken up. A soft tapping sound came from inside the house, as if something was walking on the floor with its claws. No matter what, that was definitely not a sound that a human could make. What was that? Ji Yunhuang opened his eyes and looked at the door. It was a pink little pig. It was an extremely adorable little pig. The little pig's body was light pink, and its body was round. It had round little hooves, round black eyes, a chubby little nose and a little tail with a question mark. It was wearing a sky blue doo-doo with a big word embroidered on it with golden red thread. Chapter 2376. The little pig suddenly jumped up and pointed its front hooves at Ji Yunhuang. A thick purple light flew towards him. Seeing the purple light flying towards him, Ji Yunhuang frowned and dodged to the side. However, a large vase behind him was struck by the purple light and exploded into pieces with a bang. It actually dared to break into his house and cause trouble? Ji Yunhuang raised his eyebrows and raised his hands slightly. The little pig's body involuntarily floated in the air. Ji Yunhuang looked at the angry little pig in the air and said coldly, explain. What was its purpose for breaking into his room so many times? The little pig's four hooves kicked wildly and it was unable to escape from Ji Yunhuang's barrier. It finally realized that the person in front of it was much stronger than it was. However, it still refused to admit defeat and raised its head. Its black eyes were burning with anger. What explanation? Why didn't you give this divine beast an explanation when you sneak attacked me? Sneak attack? It was obviously self-defense. Anyone who saw an uninvited guest shouting at them would immediately kick them out. Ji Yunhuang looked at it indifferently and was too lazy to talk nonsense with it. He went straight to the point and said, Who sent you here? What is your purpose? The little pig stared at him. This is this divine beast's territory. This divine beast naturally can come and go as I please. What about it? Ji Yunhuang felt that it was a little funny. Your territory? When the little pig heard this, it raised its head even higher. It had an imposing manner as if it had crossed the Yalu River. Yes, the entire Qingji mountain belongs to Master. What belongs to Master is naturally mine. Therefore this place is naturally my territory. What belongs to Master is mine. What kind of strange theory is this? However, Ji Yunhuang had no intention of disciplining other people's pets. Therefore he only caught what he was interested in. Oh? Then who is your master? The little pig was even more proud. My master is a famous divine doctor. Not only is she as beautiful as a goddess, but her medical and poison skills are also top-notch. Many people have come here just to see her. Ji Yunhuang frowned. This pig did not catch the main point. Shouldn't it introduce its master first? The little pig could praise its master for 3 days and 3 nights without stopping. It used all kinds of beautiful words to describe its master. Alright, she was the one who cured you. You ungrateful ingrate. My master had just cured you, and now you're sneakily attacking her little darling. Little pig had an accusing expression on his face, as if Ji Yunhuang had done something extremely wrong to him. Little sweetheart, what a narcissistic pig. Ji Yunhuang's heart trembled slightly as he casually replied, Oh? What's your master's name? I don't remember. Piglet widened his eyes in disbelief. Don't tell me you've lost your memory? My master saved you and you actually forgot her name? Ji Yunhuang only looked at it indifferently without saying a word. Piglet shook his head in disappointment. My master is... Little Pig paused mid-sentence. He rolled his eyes as if he had understood something. He said angrily, Humph. Cunning humans. You actually want to trick me? Master definitely didn't tell you his name, right? You want to get Master's name from me so you can go and ask for her hand in marriage, right? It turned out that this pig was not stupid. Ji Yunhuang looked at it expressionlessly. Piglet struggled in the barrier for a long time but was unable to get out. Its body became more and more angry. Chapter 2377. Ji Yunhuang moved his finger slightly and the barrier in the air slowly descended. He placed the little pig on the ground but it was still trapped in the barrier. What did your master send you here for? The little pig wagged its tail and said angrily, to watch over you and let you recuperate in your room. Also, to change your medicine. No wonder he saw a pig the moment he opened his eyes. He raised his eyebrows. You changed my medicine? Where is Lady Qing? The little pig's tail immediately stood up. Are you questioning this divine beast's ability? This divine beast is the famous Wenian, the #1 medicinal divine beast. Master is busy and has no time to care about you. Qing was probably frightened by the hug 2 days ago, right? So she sent her pet to watch over him. Ji Yunhuang's heart moved, but he did not say anything. He carefully looked at the little pig and found that no matter how he looked at it, it was still a pig with a strange color. Ji Yunhuang looked at it with suspicion. You are Wentian? Although it was a question, he believed most of its words. After all, Qing's pet should not be a simple pig. Wentian was the legendary divine beast of medicine in the Tianxi continent. It was proficient in medicinal knowledge and was naturally sensitive to rare herbs. It was easy to find herbs with Wentian. According to legends, when it was angry, it could summon lightning. However, no one had seen the real Wentian and the ancient books did not describe the appearance of this divine beast. Thus, the identity of this divine beast was a mystery. It turned out that Wentian's appearance was a pink little pig. Ji Yunhuang felt that he was not fully awake yet. The little pig wagged its tail proudly. It is the real deal. It raised its hoof and kicked the barrier. Quickly put me down. Otherwise, when I change my medicine, I will electrocute you to death. Was it threatening him? Ji Yunhuang glanced at it and raised his hand. A barrier suddenly rose into the air, causing the little pig to lose its balance and fall flat on its back inside the barrier. Ji Yunhuang said coldly, you should stay here. He turned around and left. The little pig was so angry that it stomped its feet. Suddenly, it realized that Ji Yunhuang was walking towards the door. It anxiously shouted, come back. Master said that you can't go out now. It was not that weak. Ji Yunhuang said indifferently, I am just taking a walk. He stepped out of the door. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. For the past 3 days, Tian Xueqing had not appeared even once. Instead, it was the pig that she had sent that stayed with Ji Yunhuang every day. They were inseparable. Ji Yunhuang rubbed the space between his eyebrows as he looked at the piglet under the tree. He had a slight headache. It was just a month of appreciation, and this little pig also came to join in the fun. For the past few days, he had been trying to get rid of the pig, but he didn't expect the pig's nose to be more sensitive than a dog's. It could always find him. Piglet was panting and had a headache. Its master asked it to look after this patient, but it didn't expect this patient to be so restless. He ran around every day, causing it to use all kinds of martial arts to find him. It even lost weight. When was its master going to let it go back? It really didn't want to do this chore anymore. Ji Yunhuang faintly said, Wang Kai, you go back to your room first. I'll be back in a bit. Wang Kai Piglet rolled its eyes at him and immediately sat down under the tree, using its actions to show its determination to follow Ji Yunhuang. Ji Yunhuang ignored it and sat down on the tree branch. Out of nowhere, he took out a wine gourd and drank wine while facing the bright moon. This wine was not an ordinary wine. It was spiritual wine. It was filled with spiritual energy and was extremely helpful for the recovery of his psychokinesis. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and the silver moonlight flowed on his body. Chapter 2378. His white robes fluttered in the wind and the silver moonlight flowed on his body. The wine gourd in his hand made him look even more unruly. Under the moonlight he was as handsome as a god. Wang Kai looked at the person on the tree and felt a little envious. It seems like you have recovered quite well. A clear and cold voice flowed into Ji Yunhuang's heart along with the moonlight. His heart moved and he looked down at the tree. Tian Xueqing was still wearing her green robes. Her green muslin skirt fluttered in the wind and her clear eyes rippled with the moonlight. At this moment, Tian Xueqing was quietly looking at him with a hint of disapproval in her eyes. Wang Kai Piglet leaned against its master and felt a lot more confident. It added fuel to the fire and said, "That's right, master." He hasn't been recuperating these past few days and has been running all over the place, causing Wang Kai to follow him. The piglet rambled on for a long time. However, Ji Yunhuang's attention was completely focused on Tian Xueqing. He resisted the urge to go down and hug her and said, "The moonlight is just right. Miss Qing, do you want to come up and admire the moon together?" Before Tian Xueqing could say anything, Wang Kai Piglet was the first to object. It hugged Tian Xueqing's calf with its front hooves and said earnestly, "Master, you must not go up. This is definitely his scheme. A few days ago he was still trying to get your name out." Ji Yunhuang wanted to kick this light bulb pig away, but he couldn't do that. Thus, he went with the flow and said, "I did ask for Miss Qing's name, but it was only to know the name of my benefactor and remember it in my heart. Other than that, I don't have any other intentions." Actually, it was just a name. It didn't matter if she told him, but she still didn't know his name. Instead, he asked for her name first, which made her a little unhappy. Tian Xueqing tilted her head and looked at him. "Before asking for my name, shouldn't I tell you my name first?" Ji Yunhuang flew down. His figure was light and graceful. He cupped his hands towards Tian Xueqing. "Vast Sky Empire, Ji Yunhuang." Tian Xueqing's eyes darkened. She clearly remembered that when they first met, he called himself Yun. She said indifferently, "Qing, nice to meet you." Ji Yunhuang was slightly stunned. She still wasn't willing to tell him her full name. "May I ask what Miss Qing's full name is?" He was unyielding. The corners of Tian Xueqing's lips curled up slightly as if she was smiling yet not smiling. "A name is just a code name, why must you get to the bottom of it? I'll call you young Master Yun and you can just call me Qing." When Ji Yunhuang heard her words, he realized where the problem was. "Qing, my previous name," Tian Xueqing interrupted him and said in a calm voice, "It's human nature. Young Master Ji, you don't have to explain." This was indeed human nature. One must always be on guard against others. When Ji Yunhuang was saved by Qing, he couldn't even see Qing's face clearly. At that time, how could he tell her his real name? Qing also knew nothing about this patient, so she only told him, "Qing." Ji Yunhuang paused for a moment, but in the end he did not say anything. He didn't regret telling Qing that he had lied to her because he wanted to get along with her properly without any reservations. Although he hadn't checked her soul root, his sixth sense told him that she was Tian Xueqing. Tian Xueqing sized up Ji Yunhuang and finally revealed a smile on her face. "I see that young Master Ji has completely recovered. You can leave the mountain tomorrow. However..." Chapter 2379. She took out a long receipt from her clothes and her smile deepened. "This is the list of the medicinal herbs that I have used for you these past few days. Before young Master Ji goes down the mountain, you must first settle the bill." Ji Yunhuang took the receipt and glanced at the numbers on the receipt. He felt that it was slightly funny. The prices of the medicinal herbs on the receipt were twice as expensive as usual. Was this her revenge for him taking advantage of her? He did not expect her to be a little money grubber. No wonder she gave her pet the name Wang Kai. Ji Yunhuang looked at Qing with a smile that was not a smile. His gaze was filled with deep meaning. His voice carried a hint of laziness and devilishness as he said, "This bill, I will return it to you with interest." This sentence had a double meaning. Especially the smile on his face, it made Tian Xueqing's heart feel even more alarmed. He was teasing her again. This person looked cold and noble on the outside, but she did not expect him to be so two-faced on the inside. Tian Xueqing was so angry that her face turned slightly red, but it was not very obvious in the dark. She coughed lightly as if she did not hear anything. She said in a businesslike tone, "Then you can return it to me tomorrow before you go down the mountain." Ji Yunhuang's eyesight was astonishing, so he naturally saw her slightly red face. His heart suddenly had a mischievous thought. He deliberately sighed and helplessly said, "But I don't have any money on me." Tian Xueqing could not help but widen her eyes. Her voice was somewhat angry. "What? You want to renege on your debt. When she said that she wanted the consultation fee, this person did not seem to care at all. She thought that he was a fat sheep, but she did not expect him to be someone who wanted to eat and dash. Wang Kai also jumped up and shouted, "How can you not have any money? Look at the clothes you are wearing, they are not ordinary goods. If you dare to renege on your debt, see if I don't electrocute you to death." Ji Yunhuang looked at Tian Xueqing's angry little face and was slightly stunned. In his previous life, he had never seen such a rich expression on Tian Xueqing's face. She always had an indifferent expression, as if she did not care about anything. In this life he was very happy that she finally had more of a human's aura. Ji Yunhuang looked at Qing, his brain working at high speed. He sighed and said faintly, "I made a mistake and escaped from my family. My family has already removed my name, so I can only rely on myself. A few days ago someone wanted the skin of a cloud-swallowing beast. After I accepted the mission, I went to look for the cloud-swallowing beast, but I didn't expect to suffer from chi deviation and almost lose my life. Luckily Miss Qing saved me in time." So he had no money? Wang Kai felt a little dizzy and Tian Xueqing was also a little dazed. Her medicinal herbs were all very rare and expensive. Now she was going to lose everything. Wang Kai was so angry that it turned pink. It glared at Ji Yunhuang without saying a word. Ji Yunhuang's attention had always been on Tian Xueqing, so he naturally did not miss the heartache and unwillingness that flashed across her face. He found it funny and stared at Tian Xueqing for a while. He liked to see her so lively and full of emotions. In the past, when she had just started following him, she also had all kinds of emotions. When she was wronged, she would cry. When she was happy, she would laugh. Her entire heart was filled with him, but he ignored it at that time. The cold treatment he gave her made her become more and more indifferent, colder and colder. The two of them treated each other like ice, until the moment when they could no longer return. After she disappeared, he had thought countless times about how he would treat her if he could start over again. Now that he finally had the chance to start over again, he must grab hold of this opportunity. Chapter 2380. Tian Xueqing did not know what was going on in his heart. She only cared about what she cared about. She glared at him and said, "So you don't intend to pay me back?" It was about time. Ji Yunhuang's lips curled up slightly before he said with a serious expression, "Miss Qing has saved my life. How could I let you down? Naturally, I can't go back on my words, but I really don't have a single cent. How about this? How about we change the way we repay the debt?" Change the way? Tian Xueqing's eyes were filled with doubt. She subconsciously asked, "Change the way?" "Oh." Ji Yunhuang smiled faintly. "I am quite knowledgeable. How about I help Miss Qing to repay the debt? There are so many patients here. I'm afraid Miss Qing won't be able to handle them alone. Furthermore, some of the symptoms. Miss Qing won't be able to help you, right?" At this point, Ji Yunhuang finally revealed his purpose. From the moment he started to suspect that she was Tian Xueqing's reincarnation, he did not plan to leave. Even if he wanted to go back on his words, he wanted to stay here. He was already 99% sure that Qing was Tian Xueqing. Now he was just one step away from confirming her soul. However, he didn't plan to test her soul right away. That would scare her and be detrimental to the development of their relationship in the future. He might as well stay here and spend every day with her to cultivate their relationship. When the time was right, he would hug her. Moreover, Qing had a lot of peach blossoms. He wanted to stay on this mountain and break them one by one. Ji Yunhuang's little abacus crackled in his heart. However, he still had a sincere expression on his face, as if he was thinking for Qing's sake. Keep him as her assistant? Tian Xueqing frowned. She remembered the scene when he hugged her tightly that day. Alarm bells rang in her heart. Just as she was about to refuse, Ji Yunhuang spoke first. His eyes were filled with sincerity and guilt. "That day I let Miss Qing down. I hope Miss Qing can forgive me. I swear that I will never mistake Miss Qing for anyone else. Towards Miss Qing, I will scrupulously abide by my duty and etiquette." Ji Yunhuang solemnly swore as he silently added more words to his words. Ji Yunhuang spoke with such sincerity. He even apologized and swore an oath. Tian Xueqing was moved. She couldn't possibly let her money go to waste, right? She paused for a moment before saying, "All right then, you can stay. You owe me a total of 1,000 taels of silver. Normally when you hire a doctor, you'll need 2 taels of silver per month." After Tian Xueqing said this, she calculated in her heart. Ji Yunhuang would have to stay here for 500 months before he could repay the debt. That's more than 40 years. She clenched her small fists, her small face flushed red with anger. No, it's a loss. What a loss. Even if he sold him as a slave, it wouldn't be enough. Back then, she had thought that this person was definitely very rich when she saw his noble aura. Therefore she had used the best medicine. The most expensive one. It was the most effective. Who would have thought that this person was a candle head with a silver spear? He was actually penniless. She had simply lost everything she had invested. She was afraid that she would lose half of the little treasury that she had painstakingly saved up. Prodigal. Prodigal. The more Tian Xueqing thought about it, the more she felt that she was at a loss. Her heart became more and more vexed. She looked at Ji Yunhuang's robe with hope. Don't you have any other valuable things on you? I can help you pawn them off. His robe looked very valuable. Then he must have other valuable things on him, right? Chapter 2381. Ji Yunhuang helplessly sighed. Yes. Tian Xueqing's eyes lit up. Then take it out. I'll pawn it for you. If you can't bear to part with it, you can redeem it when you're rich. Ji Yunhuang saw Tian Xueqing's expression and felt that it was funny. He realized that he liked to bully her more and more. He sighed again. His expression was sorrowful, as if he could not bear to think about the past. But I pawned everything on the way out. Now I only have one robe left. Miss Qing, you won't not even leave a robe for me, right? Tian Xueqing's mood had never fluctuated so much before. She did not believe it, she did not believe it. He must have something else on him. He was not willing to hand it over. Tian Xueqing glanced at Ji Yunhuang and tried her best to remain calm. It's not up to you to decide whether or not there is one. Wang Kai, search for me. In the end, her calmness was broken and she was gnashing her teeth in anger. Ji Yunhuang, on the other hand, had a calm expression. Since Miss Qing does not believe me, then search me. Wang Kai jumped up and down as it searched Ji Yunhuang's body. Ji Yunhuang cooperated and did not resist at all. Wang Kai had never searched so carefully before. It searched inch by inch. It used all its energy to search countless times, but in the end, it found that there was really nothing there. Wang Kai, who returned empty-handed, was in a bad mood. It was dejected and its ears drooped. Tian Xueqing looked at Wang Kai and knew the result. She was so angry that her face turned green. Ji Yunhuang sighed more than usual tonight. He said apologetically, Miss Qing, I'm sorry. However, I will be your assistant. Tian Xueqing took a deep breath and took another deep breath. In the end, she found that she could not suppress the irritation in her body. In the end, she could not hold back anymore. She clenched her teeth and said to Ji Yunhuang, Fine, you stay. I will make sure that the money I spend is worth it. Ji Yunhuang still had a sincere look on his face. He bowed slightly. It's my honor. Tian Xueqing flicked her sleeves and left. Her voice could be heard in the wind. Wang Kai, follow me. Wang Kai Piglet followed him eagerly. The man and the pet walked away, leaving him standing there alone. The night wind blew, and Ji Yunhuang's plain white robe fluttered in the wind. The silver patterns on his robe slowly flowed under the moonlight, and his temperament was cold and noble. He stood there for a long time watching the figure leave. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. Xueqing, it's my fortune to be able to see you again. The door to Ji Yunhuang's room was suddenly slammed open, and a pink little pig barged in. Ji Yunhuang slowly opened his eyes. His cold expression instantly disappeared when he saw the person behind Piglet. He revealed a faint smile. Miss Qing. After a night, Tian Xueqing had calmed down quite a bit. However, when she saw the smiling Ji Yunhuang, she still felt a headache coming on. She controlled her emotions and said faintly, Get up and change your clothes. Casually tossing a set of servant's clothes to him, Wang Kai Piglet tactfully picked up Ji Yunhuang's luxurious outer robe with its beak. Then the man and his pet swaggered off. Ji Yunhuang? He actually dared to take away his robe so boldly and confidently? Then he threw a set of servant's clothes to him? Didn't he say that he would be her assistant? The ancestor's grand disciple, Chong Kong Empire's crown prince, and the peerless genius Ji Yunhuang, who had always been calm and rational, was stunned for the first time. Chapter 2382. He sighed and resigned himself to picking up the clothes that he would never touch normally. He slowly put them on, opened the door and walked out. Ji Yun Huang wore the servant's clothes and walked on the road. The maidservants on the side of the road were stunned at first, then their faces all turned red. When did Tranquil Mountain have such a handsome and noble servant? It couldn't be helped that he was handsome. Even the servant's clothes made him look unruly and carefree, like an elegant young master. Ji Yun Huang's appearance directly increased the attractiveness of Tranquil Mountain servants. At this time Ji Yun Huang deeply understood Tian Xueqing's words, "I will make my money well spent." He did not stay idle that day. He was ordered around by Tian Xueqing to sweep the floor, wipe the table, clean the study, grind the ink, tidy up the medicine box, collect herbs and boil them. This girl really made the best use of everything and was risking her life to squeeze him dry. Ji Yun Huang felt angry and amused at the same time. However, when he saw Qing pretending to be calm but secretly feeling happy, he felt that it was all worth it. To be able to see her clearly and feel her by his side, this was a scene that he could only dream of 100 years ago. Moreover, this kind of work was too easy for him. Sometimes happiness was just that simple. Of course, Ji Yun Huang was not satisfied with just looking at her. In the future he would take it step by step, and make her his wife once again. After Ji Yun Huang completed the task that Tian Xueqing gave him, he once again knocked on the door and walked into her room. He was slightly startled. Tian Xueqing's room and her aura seemed to be different. In front of others she was always cold and indifferent. She did not seem easy to get close to. At such a young age she had a kind of domineering aura that made the patients under her extremely obedient. Her room's decorations were elegant and had a trace of childishness. The color of the room also leaned towards warmth. That Wang Kai pig lying on her bed looked extremely harmonious with her room. After all, it was still a child. Ji Yun Huang looked at himself. He was old. Fortunately, he still looked like he was in his 20s. Otherwise, if he stood in front of her again, he would feel ashamed. At this moment, Tian Xueqing was sitting beside a desk with one hand supporting her head. She was reading a medical book. When she saw Ji Yun Huang, a hint of surprise flashed across her face, but it soon disappeared. She lowered her head and continued to read her book. Pretending to be indifferent, she asked, "Is something the matter?" Ji Yun Huang forcefully retracted his gaze from her body and handed a white flower with a hint of blue to Tian Xueqing. "Miss Qing, the matter has been settled. Do you want this flower?" Tian Xueqing's hand seemed to tremble slightly as she took the flowers. It was done so quickly. She hadn't even flipped through a few pages of the book yet, and he was already back? That way, he would have profited. Tian Xueqing coughed lightly and picked up the little flower. She looked at it carefully and then nodded. "Yes, it's the tearless flower." Ji Yun Huang continued to look at her. Then, "Does Miss Qing have any other instructions?" He had clearly done everything for the whole day, but he did not seem to be in a sorry state. He still looked like a noble young master with fluttering sleeves. Tian Xueqing looked at him and racked her brain, but she could not think of any other tasks. In the end she collapsed on the chair and waved her hand. "No, you've been tired for the whole day. Go and rest. I'll call you if there's anything else." Giving him different tasks was also very taxing on her brain. Chapter 2383. Rest. He was still far from reaching the point where he needed to rest. Moreover, to him, true rest was to take a good look at Tian Xueqing. With her by his side he would feel at ease. Looking at Tian Xueqing who was reading, Ji Yun Huang reached out and took the book from her hands. He casually glanced at it and suddenly asked, "Miss Qing, when you were reading, you seemed to have encountered something that you didn't understand?" After a pause, he turned the medical book over to Tian Xueqing and lightly tapped on a line of words. "Is it here?" Looking at the slender and white fingers on the medical book, Tian Xueqing was slightly stunned. How did he know? Although she didn't want to admit it, she really didn't understand this part. Tian Xueqing nodded her head and a trace of curiosity appeared in her eyes. "How did you know?" Ji Yun Huang mysteriously smiled, "Probably because I can read minds?" He could read minds and he could only read her mind. He knew what her every word and action meant. There was no other reason. It was because he had recalled her appearance countless times in his memories. Her voice and her smile. Tian Xueqing was stunned at first. She looked at him from head to toe and then shook her head. Her clear eyes were filled with disbelief as she seriously said, "You are lying to me." Ji Yun Huang straightforwardly placed the book on the desk. This sentence should be understood like this. Tian Xueqing was a good child with a strong thirst for knowledge. Her attention was immediately diverted as she listened to Ji Yun Huang's explanation. Alright, do you understand now? Ji Yunhuang tilted his head and looked at her. Tian Xueqing nodded her head. The doubts that had troubled her for a long time had been solved. She only felt comfortable in her heart and revealed a smile. She turned her head and was about to say something when she suddenly froze. Unknowingly, the two of them were already very close to each other. When Tian Xueqing turned her head, she just happened to fall into Ji Yunhuang's deep eyes. He looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Tian Xueqing could almost see her own helplessness in Ji Yunhuang's eyes. His breath was right next to her ear and her sensitive earlobe was as red as coral. This was the first time she had been so close to a man other than her master. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but he seemed to have a magical power that made her body freeze. She stared at him with her round eyes, forgetting to react for a moment. Ji Yunhuang's eyes darkened as he spoke in a voice as deep as a cello. Lady Qing, if you continue to look at me like that, I might just kiss you. Tian Xueqing finally reacted and her small face turned pink. She suddenly leaned back, wanting to put some distance between them. However, she didn't expect that she would use too much force and the chair would flip over. Just as she was about to fall head first, Tian Xueqing's vision blurred. Then her entire body was pulled by a strong force. She fiercely crashed into Ji Yunhuang's embrace. The memories of that day were once again awakened. She was filled with his cold and delicate fragrance. Her nose just happened to bump into his chest. Heavens, his chest was really hard. Her nose was sore from the collision. Tears welled up uncontrollably and swirled in her eyes. Ji Yunhuang took the opportunity to hug her and gently patted Tian Xueqing's back as if he was coaxing a child. He softly said, "Don't cry." Tian Xueqing suddenly pulled away from him. She only felt embarrassed and angry. However, her nose was still extremely sore and tears once again rolled down her cheeks. This was so embarrassing. She angrily glared at him with tears still swirling in her eyes. Chapter 2384. Looking at her tear-stained face, Ji Yunhuang's heart ached. How long had it been since he last saw her cry? Once upon a time, he had turned a blind eye to her cries. By the time he subconsciously wanted to see her true emotions, she had already become an ice beauty without any desires. No matter what he did, he would never be able to obtain even a single tear from her. So she could cry as well. So, she was once so delicate and naive. A tear in his heart seemed to be slowly torn open by a pair of hands. He subconsciously used his hand to wipe away her tears. The delicate skin under his fingers fascinated him and he almost could not bear to move his hand away. He almost used all of his self-control to control himself and then moved his hand away as if nothing had happened. He patted Tian Xueqing's head. His voice was as indifferent as before, but if one listened carefully, one could hear a hint of hoarseness in his voice. "Alright, Qing, you read the book by yourself. I'm going to rest. If there's anything, just call me." Without waiting for Tian Xueqing to speak, he turned and left. The self-control that he was so proud of was on the verge of collapse. If he stayed any longer, he was afraid that he would turn into a wolf and pounce on her. Take it slow, take it slow." Tian Xueqing heard his words and felt that something was wrong. From his tone, why did it sound like she was the one who insisted on him accompanying her to read the book? It was obviously him who insisted on reading the book with her. Tian Xueqing sat on the chair. Her thoughts were in a mess and she did not know what to think. After a long time, she suddenly reacted. Did he just take advantage of her? Furthermore, he took advantage of her and ran away before she could react. This bastard. Tian Xueqing's small face turned red from anger. Ding-ling-ling. Ding-ling-ling. The crisp sound of the bell rang and interrupted Tian Xueqing's thoughts. She looked at the silver bell that was ringing non-stop and slightly frowned. At the same time, a little maid dressed in pink ran in. Miss, quickly go and take a look at the patient in Heavenly Fragrance Court. His condition seems to have worsened." Worsened? Wasn't he almost fully recovered yesterday? Temporarily suppressing these doubts, Tian Xueqing calmly said, "Fen Shui, bring my medicine box." She stood up and walked out of the room. Her pace was very fast, but it looked like she was taking a leisurely stroll. Her figure was graceful, and her green muslin robe was slightly fluttering in the wind. Even her black hair was fluttering in the wind, making her look like a green butterfly flapping its wings. When she passed by Jingxinyuan, Tian Xueqing paused her footsteps and subconsciously took a look inside. No one. Just as she was feeling puzzled, she suddenly felt a light pat on her shoulder. She turned her head and saw Ji Yunhuang's handsome face. The corner of her mouth hooked up into a smile. "Ah Qing, are you looking for me?" Tian Xueqing was shocked, but she quickly adjusted herself. She had no time to ask him where he had been. She grabbed his hand and quickly explained as she walked, "Follow me. The patient in Qianxiang court has suddenly deteriorated. Aren't you going to help me?" Ji Yunhuang allowed her to pull him forward. He lowered his head to look at their tightly clasped hands. They looked rather harmonious. The smile on his lips deepened. Tian Xueqing inadvertently saw his smile. At first she was puzzled. Then she suddenly realized something and let go of his hand. She was both embarrassed and shocked. Why did she take the initiative to hold his hand and walk forward? In this life, Tian Xueqing did not have the thought that men and women should not touch each other. She was a physician and had treated countless patients. If she had this kind of thought, she would not want to be a physician. What shocked her was that she actually took the initiative to hold someone's hand. Chapter 2385. She was shocked that she had actually taken the initiative to hold someone's hand. This was something that had never happened before. She had a cold temperament and did not like to have too much physical contact with others. When she was treating a patient, she would not touch anyone unless it was absolutely necessary. But now she had actually held Ji Yunhuang's hand so naturally. What was wrong with her? Ji Yunhuang looked at his empty palm and a sense of disappointment rose in his heart. His eyes darkened as he reached out to grab Tian Xueqing's hand and pulled her into his embrace. Before she could say anything, he had already used his lightness skill to fly into the distance. As he flew, he explained with a serious expression, "This is faster." Tian Xueqing was speechless. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but just as she moved, Ji Yunhuang's body swayed in the air and his helpless voice sounded, "Ah Qing, don't move. Be careful not to fall." Tian Xueqing looked down. It was so high, she hugged Ji Yunhuang's waist tightly and obediently stopped moving. Her expression was still indifferent, but there was a hint of nervousness in her eyes. Ji Yunhuang held her waist with one hand and patted her head with the other. He gently comforted her, "Don't be nervous. Relax." Tian Xueqing's face turned pale when she was suddenly patted in the head. She hugged Ji Yunhuang even tighter and said with a trembling voice, "Don't move." It seemed like she was really scared. Thus he swayed in the air again and felt satisfied when Tian Xueqing hugged him even tighter. Ji Yunhuang carried Tian Xueqing and landed in Heavenly Fragrance Court. The maidservant at the door immediately cried and ran over, "Miss Qing, please take a look at our young master." It seemed to be very serious. Tian Xueqing's expression darkened. She carried the medicine box and followed the maidservant into the room. Ji Yunhuang's footsteps paused for a moment, and he looked at the door with a meaningful expression. The atmosphere in this courtyard seemed to be a little strange. Soon after, he also entered the room. The door was closed and the room was filled with a pungent fragrance. Tian Xueqing frowned and looked at the maidservant. Her voice was slightly cold. "What happened? Didn't I tell the patient to maintain good ventilation in the room and not to use incense?" The young maidservant said submissively, "I know all of this, but this is my master's request. Yesterday he suddenly asked for incense and didn't allow me to open the doors and windows. I tried to persuade him but he didn't listen." Tian Xueqing raised her eyebrows. In her impression, this young master Su did not like such strong incense. Why did he suddenly fall in love with fragrances after getting so sick? Ji Yunhuang's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. He suddenly asked for incense and a strong one at that. It seems like he's trying to hide something. Tian Xueqing walked towards the big bed. Layers of curtains fell on the bed, blocking the view of outsiders. They could only vaguely see the silhouette of the person inside. Just as Tian Xueqing was about to pull the blanket away, Ji Yunhuang grabbed her hand and said, "Let me do it. It's not convenient for you." He glanced at her with a meaningful look in his eyes. Tian Xueqing was stunned for a moment, but she didn't say anything. Ji Yunhuang turned around and gave a brief order to the servant girl, "Open all the doors and windows in the room and extinguish the incense." The young maidservant was stunned for a moment and stammered, But my young master ordered that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.